Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 15th episode of the Sucrose Stans Podcast. Today we have a few guests, two to be exact, and it's two common guests. Kinkle, I'm happy that you are here today. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, I am Kinkle. I'm a Genshin content creator. I do a bit of theorycrafting, things like theorycrafting, counter reviews, all that kind of stuff. Hello.
Yes, thank you for coming. And Martin is here again.
Hello. I'm Martin. I do a bit of napkin math here and there. I'm usually interested in TC for unusual teams, creative teams, DPS Lila, DPS Lanyon, stuff like that, just to help people clear with their favorite characters. Glad to be here.
Yeah, very, very based. And I'm the usual Saga. I upload on YouTube, and I host this podcast. Yeah, okay, so today's topic is going to be misconceptions. So, today it could get very heated, but it also can be very chill. I mean, Flip isn't here today, so there might be some less. It's just us three, so I think we are going to mostly agree on our takes. Not to say that Flip's takes are like bad or anything, but yeah. So who wants to start?
I guess I could go.
Yeah. Oh, actually, I
All
should
right.
I should explain how this is like. Basically, we are going to do it as the same with the 5 overrated characters. So everyone says one take, and then we do this until each of us doesn't have any takes left, and each of us has 5 takes individually. And then in the end, we are going to decide what's the biggest misconception, I guess. But yeah, okay, Martin, you can go.
Let's start with something somewhat light. People thinking that characters can only be used through one way and one artifact. So think people running scroll on Shilonen, people running scroll on Citilali, and having both basically not really one of them like not being providing an artifact set benefit basically, or people using only Crimson Witch on the Luke, even though quite a few people play him now in Blanche, where Crimson Witch doesn't make as much sense as maybe something like Shiminawa, and a lot of people farmed Emblem. People sticking to certain HP builds, for example, for defensive units, when said defensive units can actually dish out a respectable amount of damage, like Cheverus, for example, or Lanyon. So yeah, in general, just people sticking to one build, one artifact set, and never ever like changing it, even though the character can benefit in different scenarios from different artifact sets.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
actually do this sometimes accidentally. I think the most common thing that people do is play Yelana or Furina on an energy recharge weapon in like a team where they don't need any, like double hydro, since I mean
Yeah.
Furina and Yelana are mostly used in double hydro. And in these teams they can use like more offensive weapons, but people don't do it, and it's like just
Yeah.
capping the damage kind of.
Yeah. What's funny about this is that I do this so often. I didn't even think of it as a misconception, but it's something I could have actually said. Because I change my artifacts so often. Like, or for example, if I'm like trying to do a Hutao showcase and I had Lily on instructor, or sorry, on scroll set before for another team, I'll change her to instructor, or I'll put like take Furina off of Golden Troupe and put her on like a 2-piece HP set, or even Archaic Petra set if I'm using Jalonen, to then make her buff more damage, or like and I recognize this too when I review a lot of accounts. A lot of people build a characters one way and never change it, and even though they could be built in different ways to accommodate different teams, right? Like no one ever thinks of would ever think of using Jelona on an instructor set, but there
Yeah.
are teams where it's better than using Scroll or even Archaic Petra. So like that's a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
I just did not think about it
I
at all.
I especially think the scroll thing is so big because like it's not like scroll and VV are the only good supportive sets. You
Yeah,
can run other
yeah,
things on them. Like I think
yeah,
it doesn't make Jelona a bad character because she also uses scroll.
yeah. Yeah, a lot of people, I actually gotten comments on videos of mine when I do showcases using like either Mavuika's Lolly together or Mavuika's alone together as like a support setup or like using Lolly Jalon together. I'm like, oh dude, why are you using both of them together when you like for Nouvellette, for example? It's like, oh, you should change Lolly off your Nouvellette team because Lolly can't use scroll. There's other things you can use there.
Yeah.
Like you can use our pictures alone and then you scroll Lolly, right? So people just kind of think of characters to be built one way. The only character in the game that really can only be built, technically not even one way, but it's Raiden, where for her actual damage, I don't think there's any other set that's even remotely close to
Yeah.
Emblem. She's like the only character that's like that.
Yeah, unless
You know, I was
you're
actually
coping in a hyper bloom, but yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, that's what I was saying. Like even she's technically not one build. And I also want to say this: a lot of people don't consider when they're building characters. Like a lot of people, when I review accounts, I'll see someone with like, let's say, I don't know, like this is Podman, like a Yoimiya that's 4-piece Shimenawa, but the Shimenawa artifact set is kind of bad. Like the stats are bad.
Yeah.
No one ever thinks to try doing a two-piece
Yeah,
build.
that's
Which
true.
if you have a good range of substats, like really solid substats, it can be stronger than going for a 4-piece. But people don't ever really consider that.
Yeah, it's only
Right.
the Maréchaussée and Obsidian where it's really just better to use a cope version
Yeah.
of that set than two-piece. Otherwise, it's most of the time. Like my Gladiator for a long time was better than my Whimsy set for Command.
Yeah. Funny enough, there was a point when I was first like really learning how to build characters properly, using Genshin Optimizer to help me with that. I had my Utah on a pretty Dogwater Crimson set, but I thought it was pretty decent because I didn't have anything else. My Shimano set was worse. But then when I put my Utah on the Optimizer, it gave me a two-piece rainbow build.
Oh no.
Because it was a 0 dead stat build with like, I think it was 245 CV with a crap ton of VM and HP. I was like, whoa. That's when I learned, it's like, wait, you don't always need a 4-piece set on characters, especially DPS ones, when you can have good substats if you have a lot of good substats on other artifacts.
One of my best Yelans is two-piece and then rainbow.
Yeah,
it's pretty funny.
It's really funny. It was actually the Hutao build wasn't rainbow. It was two-piece maidens, but maidens doesn't do anything for Hutao.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, so that was funny. A lot of people ask like, "Why do you have maidens on your Hutao?" It's like, listen,
listen, okay.
Oh, dude.
For the burst healing, so your burst heals more. True.
Yeah.
Okay. Martin, do you have anything?
I just wanted to say something related to the thing you mentioned, Kinku, where characters can like it's very hard to find characters that have one build. One that I actually thought about when I was writing down like the ideas was: is there really a good set for Ito outside of the defense set, like Husk?
If you
him with Furina Martro
so. But that's it.
Oh, okay. But like I don't know, like I feel like just Furina enabling Marchusei, does that count? Like technically, because even characters that don't benefit from it, like Shao, like the 2Bs, technically they still run it, and it's still like very competitive.
Yeah. Is there any other set he could run other than like if we don't count Martro, is there any other set?
Because I was thinking like the closest thing is Gladiator, but then your Oshi doesn't benefit at all from that.
Yeah.
And Oshi's a pretty sizable portion of your damage.
Yeah. Yeah, it really would
like
just
the 2
be
pieces attack, which is like he usually runs around with like 4k if not 5k attack.
Yeah. So
like so it feels to me like he's one of the few characters in the game that you really want to get it, unless like you said, obviously you can just cheese anything with Furina. So should we move to a different topic, or can we mention like a few builds for like alternative for builds, for example.
Yeah, I don't
Good.
mind. We can talk about alternative builds.
Because like I suppose a lot of people know about like just Mona with, you know, maidens for Furina,
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
true.
right?
Yeah.
And then there is like Bennett with instructor.
Oh
Like
yeah, that's a big
there
one.
literally are scenarios where he's better off using instructor than noblesse, even if no one is running noblesse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also want to say like Archaic Petra with the advent of Jalonen has gotten in my opinion has gotten a lot more value now, since you can with Jalonen you can kind of run it on anyone as long as you do the rotations right, so where the buff actually is still there when you're doing your damage.
Yeah.
So like I
Uh,
often am running Archaic Petra Bennett quite a bit.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
People complain a lot about like the crystallize, or at least I've seen a lot of content creators say like they don't like it, but it's like she dashes through the enemy, so there's a very good chance you're gonna catch it for just the
Yeah.
initial dash. And if
Yeah.
you don't, because she's so like, I don't know if this is the correct term to describe her, slippery. Like the skates allow you like to just move around very easily
Yeah.
around the battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That like it's really not that hard. Like you,
Yeah, I don't
I
think
find
it
it kind of
is.
ridiculous that like you're forced into an E dash technically, right? Like the E covers like a dash distance somewhat,
Mhm.
maybe less, but like it covers like somewhat of a dash distance. And then you having like to do two normal attacks where you can like, you know, move while you're doing them to some extent. And then on top of that, you can do another dash right before you switch off her. Like, is there really is it really that hard to not pick the crystallize that is right under the enemy with Shilonin?
I
Like I
will
think people
say
blow the water.
I mean, it can be kind of difficult there, like in doing showcases with like say Archaic Petra Bennett or Archaic Petra Furina that I've done as well. With Jalonen, there are times where you might, because she applies Geo when she touches an enemy during her dash. If you say you're not directly on top of the enemy when you dash, you won't dash through them. You'll dash into them, and then the crystal generates and you immediately pick it up. Like it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I mean, obviously,
So
there are
there is
also
a bit of
scenarios where like certain bosses will just block you, right? Like they will have
Yeah,
like
yeah,
bad
That too,
collisions.
yeah.
And there are also scenarios where, well, you're fighting Topa, so
Yeah,
good luck
yeah.
crystallizing anything useful.
Yeah.
But it's still better than just not running scroll. Like the argument I can see for people sticking to scroll is you're playing Mavuika. At that point, I feel like it doesn't matter, right? Like the headache of having to switch artifacts back and forth is not worth it because your
It
Mavuika
is
is gonna
Yeah.
anyway destroy whatever you're fighting, especially with her
Yeah.
premium team.
Yeah.
But yeah, another example that I saw a lot is like Senshu with Noblesse.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
blessing show.
Run him on Emblem when like a lot of his teams Noblesse could technically be a really good alternative.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit archaic to say. No, the blessing show used to be like the best way to run him back in the 1.0 days before Emblem came out. But no one, a lot of people really don't use Noblesse on anyone besides Bennett. I notice, like maybe like Diona occasionally, but like
I guess Chevrolet
rarely.
as well. I've seen a lot
Yeah,
of Chevrolet.
Chevrolet as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Scroll says Chevrolet is something that people don't use often, which can be pretty
yeah,
decent.
that's true.
But
Shenhe was also like people use two piece even though like Shenhe is better on Noblesse.
yeah. And I think the reason behind that is just because Noblesse is you pretty much only want to strongbox Noblesse because the main is just dog. And I've come across a lot of people in my time of streaming and whatnot who don't want to strongbox. They feel like it's a waste of artifact EXP, which sure. And so a lot of people just don't really get their Noblesse sets.
Yeah, that's
They
true.
might just get one for Bennett. And funny enough, Bennett doesn't even need a Noblesse set most of the time. It's a good set for him, but there are alternatives for Bennett.
Yeah, about that, like Noblesse on Bennett, I think people are like Janssen can also, I think Janssen is a good Noblesse user, and like I don't think we should entirely focus on scroll Janssen because, for example, for Navia, you can't use obviously for Navia the question is, are you even going to play Janssen? But let's say someone doesn't have Bennett, then I think playing Janssen on Noblesse would be like the next best thing you could do to like get a big attack buff, and it's just solid. So don't just limit your thinking about like Janssen on like only playing Scroll.
Also,
Like, Scroll isn't the
Yeah,
only supporter
shout
set.
out,
Yeah.
shout out to Veressa with VV.
Vivi
I honest to
Veressa,
God don't think it's that bad. Not Veressa, I meant
Chaska.
what's her face? Chaska.
That's Vivi Chaska too.
VV
Like,
Chaska.
dude, and ironically, a bit of EM on Chaska with VV can actually sometimes end up like being very similar to Obsidian, if not better.
I can see it on teams if like you have good sub DPSs that can make use of the VV debuff.
Right? Like Furina teams, for example, it can be
Yeah.
pretty substantial, especially if you have a few cons on her. If you're running like even Shangling and like
Yeah.
you're running Bennett Shangling core with Shaska, right? It can be pretty meaningful to have VV, and like if you have really good VV pieces, which I assume a lot of people have Kazuha and a lot of people might have, Venti since the start, so like people did farm VV because it's essentially like it's a pretty popular set, right?
Yeah.
And you can strong box it, so you can actually end up like edging out with it. And it's like you said, the Saga. There is the people just sticking to certain sets, and I really want to take this chance to let people know how terrible Golden Troop is, especially for like characters like Alhaitham, because like 9 times out of 10, your two piece is gonna be better.
Yeah.
Not Golden
Yeah.
Troop, God, Gilded Dreams. I
yeah.
keep
Yeah,
confusing them.
Gilded Dreams is like, I mean, Golden Troop works
Golden
on Hytham, to be fair. It does work. He's a
A
field
Golden
damage
Troop
wizard.
is better than Gilded Dreams on a high them. People don't
Oh,
know.
actually?
Wow, damn. Okay, I don't know about that one.
Oh, it is.
I haven't tested it. I haven't tested it on Hytham. I've tested it on Sino, really enough. It's okay.
But yeah, so like Gilded Dream
yeah.
is rarely ever like the best in slot set on Alhaitham. It edges by like I think 1 or 2 substats. It's so not
Yeah.
worth going for 4 beasts on him, especially because he can have pretty high ER needs if you're not playing him with Nahida.
Yeah.
Ye-
The thing about Gilded Dreams is that it just really isn't like the strongest of sets because it just gives you stats, like basic stats, rather than like say damage bonus or something. So if you have really solid 2 piece builds, you can just make it up with those substats.
Yeah,
So.
I think like people think Gilded Dreams like I about Gilded Dreams. People think that Gilded Dreams is supposed to be a Hytham set, but it's like more of a Yaimiko set because the Hytham's best teams always have a second Dendro character, meaning you get like
Yeah.
16 or 40% attack or something, which is completely useless on a Hytham. Like it doesn't do as much as like the
Yeah.
EM, obviously. So then it's 80 EM from the 2-piece and 100 EM from the 4-piece. That's 20 more EM than playing 2-piece EM. So it's not
Yeah.
it's not anything spectacular.
Yeah.
And Nahida also, like, I don't think Nahida's damage is that great, but Nahida has a ton of options when it comes to personal damage, like Golden Troop, Deepwood.
Golden Troop. Yeah, I preach Golden Troop Nahida a lot because it can be really good, even for like C6 Nahida. It's actually quite strong.
No, I
I think it
didn't
might be
know.
stronger than Gilded. Yeah, because I have a friend with a C6 Nahida, and I tested it there. They were always running her on Gilded Dreams for DPS, but the Gilded Dream set wasn't good. But they had a crazy Golden Troop set, and I just tested them between, and it was just way more damage. Because
Yeah.
C6 Nahida is skill damage, so
Makes sense.
yeah.
One last thing I want to mention about this topic, I guess, before we move on, is we talked about different sets. I want to talk about different builds. So keeping the set but changing the stats.
Yeah.
EM Kachina. Full on.
Yeah.
Like just
Oh,
you run triple EM
shit.
Kachina. And a lot of the time, the shield is honestly kind of bug. Like you get a pretty durable shield from just running EM Kachina, and Kachina isn't really going to be contributing all that much damage most of the time, if not all the time, even at C6. So you might as well just turn her into a defensive unit as a plus to her. And like, the same applies to Shalonin, right? Like, let's say you're comfortable with Shalonin healing as is. You can a lot of time just turn Shalonin into like triple EM, as long as you can meet her ER requirements. And there you go. Now you have a semi-shielder for Nuvolette. So if you don't have C1 Nuvolette, for example.
The only thing with Jelona, I would say, if you have P Patrol, then it's not going to be as good because P Patrol wants defense. But yeah.
The same also goes technically for Shangling. That one is a nightmare though, but you can theoretically run 4 EM Shengling for Chevrolet's teams and just proc a bunch of overloads, especially with an electro carry that like applies a decent amount of electro with Fischl, for example. And it can sometimes be better, right, than running her for actual damage.
Yeah.
Um,
Since without Bennett,
the
her damage, her crit
yeah, it's not
focus
gonna be
damage.
all that great. And I guess the last one I wanted to say is just running damage on characters in general. It's technically like a different point, but not really, because it ties into this. A lot of people end up hyper investing into their carry when there are other characters in their team that do damage. The prime
Yes.
example for that for me is Farazon. Like at a certain point, getting like whatever increase of damage is for Shao is gonna like take you years, or not years, let's say months, for example, right? It would be so much better off to get your Farazon off just an ER build with horrible stats and actually put her in a really good build. I have, for example, like 220 CV Farazon build, and just pressing Q does like 100k.
Yeah.
Right there, right? And
Yeah.
like most people I've seen build Farazon, their Farazon doesn't hit for that. She hits like for 40, maybe 50. And it's like,
Yeah.
you're not gonna get that much damage increase on your Shao if your Shao already has like decent crit value. So it's so much better to just invest into her. Technically, you could argue a little bit Kirara. Kirara's Q has really high motion value.
Yeah.
So you can also invest a bit of DPS into her. So like just generally speaking, people fixating on like, okay, you're a support, or you're like, you're there to buff my carry, so here you go, just have enough ER and let me invest into DPS. And that's fine, right? If you have enough damage. But if you're trying to squeak out a bit more damage, then it's definitely worth looking at your sub-DPSs, or like any character that does damage in the rotation.
I mean, you were probably going to talk about Lanyan anyway, but like Lanyan's shield at C2 is so big that you might as well build her for crit.
And her damage is actually pretty noticeable, especially with C1.
Yeah. But we've yapped enough about that point, I suppose.
Yeah, true. It's 22 minutes in and one take, but it was a very good take. So
yeah.
Thank you.
Kinkle, do you wanna go next?
There's a point I had which kind of ties into what Martin was talking about, which was this is something I see a lot of my streams since I do a lot of account reviews, which a lot of people, y'all know what Akasha, the website Akasha is.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. A lot of people stress heavily on trying to get high ranked on there, and equally as much just try to get really, really high investment builds on their carries or their whatever DP or whatever character they're trying to build. But the problem with that is a lot of people don't realize that after a certain threshold, you're not gonna see much upgrade on your characters by just constantly farming artifacts, when you could be farming for either other characters or for the support for the same team, like Martin mentioned. Like for example, there are people out there who will like come to trying to chase top 1%, and then they'll get like an upgrade, but then they won't see substantial damage increase. And this is because like one substat, say on Akasha, one substat will get you from like maybe like top 2% to top, I don't know, 0.5%, which is a really big increase. But in actual the game, it's gonna be like not that much, like maybe like less than 1% extra damage. But people still spend months and months and months spending grinding artifacts, and they could be leveling. I've seen people with like the craziest builds, but they have like level 6 talents, or their weapon is still level 80, their character is still like level 70 or 80, right? Or like 80 unascended. Where like there are these easy layups they could have in their builds to upgrade their damage, but they'd rather just go and farm artifacts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like regarding that, it also just heavily depends on like what team. Like I think none of the Clarence teams have Sarah, right? If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So attack is obviously a good stat, but usually like if you run like Clarence Sarah teams, or even like Clarence Janssen, but like Janssen is like, I hope they add like Clarence Janssen in the future, but they might not. But like then attack is completely useless because like attack doesn't do anything past 3k. And
that's it. Yeah.
There are
That's another
other
problem with Akasha,
other examples would obviously include Xiangling because of rational. I think it considers the overloads she produces. So EM is actually does it count the overload
I don't know
damage?
I don't know if it even counts overload damages that on there.
Yeah, or maybe it
I
was
could
the
check.
I
opposite.
assume it would, because if it wouldn't, that would be really bad. Because you can't not run 200 and something EM Shangling, right? Since the ends with EM,
Wait,
so it would be a bit of a waste if they don't calculate that
I
damage.
just need to check.
Yeah, I'm looking too.
It's just one Pyronado hit. Yeah, so it doesn't actually count in the overload. So EM is like EM is a lot better than this wants you to think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing the other thing about Akasha that I was gonna say, the other part of my point was that Akasha, like the teams that they set in Akasha aren't always the same teams that people use, and some people don't realize that.
Yeah, that's
Like,
true.
yeah, like, which means certain stats that you may think your build might need because the website is telling you need it, you might not actually need. Like, for example, my Yuemiya, which I have, she's like top. I think I have one attack sense EM build that's like top. I think top 0.2%. But the build that's actually stronger than that is my EM sense build for vape, which is only top 0.4%. It's weaker, even though it has more crit, and it does more damage overall. But because the site doesn't include a team with Bennett, attack has more value than EM does, or EM would have.
And then
Another thing that people don't notice is the rotations.
Yeah,
For
too.
Alhaitham, for example, it assumes that you're doing a split rotation, so his ER needs are not nearly as much.
Yeah, that too.
I have noticed that every single time I tried to chase like the leaderboard, my units felt very uncomfortable. Like
Yeah.
I always was like if they introduce, let's say, a boss that doesn't drop as much energy particles, or I finish the chamber too early in the rotation, it just feels so bad, and you end up losing so much more damage trying to battery your unit than if you would have just got one or two extra ER rolls, because you already have like damage. Like, I highly doubt most people who even are on Akasha within, let's say, the top 10% lack damage. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
You don't lack the damage.
I would say, I would
So,
honestly argue like top 15 to top 20. Like the difference between a top 20% build and a top 1% is so much less than people think.
Yeah,
Like a
that's
top 20% can be really, really good because the amount of people that are on Akasha that have really strong artifacts is a lot, obviously. So that top 20% is just with people with very similar damage. Cons and like actual team builds make up the difference in actual gameplay, but on the website the damage there's not going to be that different. There's just so many people there that you end up being top 20% when you actually have very, very good damage. All right.
Yeah, especially like Raiden, like
Yeah,
C2,
right,
like that's the
yeah.
most the difference between like being top 1% and top 5%. My Raiden on like my Raiden is pretty good, but I still only get to 5%, and she's like, her build is way more invested than like, I don't know, my Yoimiya's build, and that's like top 1% very easily.
Yeah.
Just because Ryan's leaderboard is so extremely competitive.
Yeah, I mean, there's also like a million builds. I think Raiden has the most builds
Yeah,
in the database.
it depends on the popularity, right? Because there are certain
Yeah.
characters that are not that popular.
Yeah.
I think one of them is like Risley.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be that hard to get a pretty good like leaderboard for Risley, because not that many people vote for him. I don't assume they have one for Sigewin, but if they did, I'd assume that also would be very easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other part of it that can be skewed is that sometimes because there's different categories, they might put you kind of weirdly on there. Like, for example, you may think your build is either better or worse than it actually is. For case in point, my melt Ganyu build, no, my freeze Ganyu build, in one category, like the actual freeze category, which it doesn't innately show. It shows just the default normal category, which combines mostly melt builds and the few people who run freeze. I'm top 3% in the regular category that combines everything, but I'm top 15% in the actual freeze category. because the sheer amount of people that run melt over freeze on Ganyu, so or well, I guess a freeze setup over like Blizzard on Ganyu. Melt setup over Blizzard.
Damn. I never realized.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you have anything more to add?
I think that's about it.
Okay. Okay, well, it's just
Your turn.
I have just another thing that I've talked about this in another episode already, but I think people are still overrating Mavuika as a sub-DPS at the moment.
Yeah.
I think that compared to characters like Yelan or even Furina, who I've often criticized, I've often criticized her sub-DPS, and honestly even Nahida, I think these characters just deal more damage from off-field than Mavuika. Mavuika's main damage is her melted burst or vape burst if you have it, and if you don't have it, then it's even split between the initial hit and the off-field damage, and it's just if you don't melt the first hit, then what you are looking at is 260k DPR, or maybe a bit more depending on if you have her signature weapon. If you have cons, her C1 is very impactful because it allows you to get more skill hits. So it makes her sub DPS go from underwhelming to reasonable, okay. And then C2 is obviously the death shred thing. And at that point, she's not really she's more, I would say, more of a support that deals damage than an off-field sub DPS. But she still does respectable damage at that point because also of the 200 base attack.
Yeah.
But yeah, otherwise just I don't know. She doesn't really. I just heard the take a lot that she does damage from off field, and it's just she doesn't do more damage than Kachina. Still, I'm sorry. C6 Kachina. I still I built my Kachina, and I wasn't I was underwhelmed, okay? But it's not much worse, and I don't have cons at the moment on Kachina. And it wasn't much worse than just Mavuika's. I can get actually 90k on her burst, on Kachina's burst. And I mean, that's not that far from an unreacted Mavuika burst.
all right.
Yeah. That's my take.
Saga. I think I'm gonna take you up on that take if you don't mind.
It's okay.
So here's the thing. I have been playing a lot of open world, God forbid, right? I know. Mavuika. And usually in open world, I don't even bother pressing her Q, right? I just activate her E, and usually that's enough to kill things, right?
Yeah.
Maybe my build is good, but I assume most people have farm obsidian, so they should have a decent build for Mavuika, and since obsidian gives you crit, which is the rare stat, most people should have an okay build. She hits for 40k off field. If you're not really doing
without buffs.
For the most part, yeah. Maybe you're running one buff, tenacity, let's say, or noblesse, just one buff, or you swapped from a character to give her TDS, right? Just one single buff, she should be able to hit 40k, right? If you manage to actually vape it or melt it, she's gonna hit obviously for a lot more than that.
Yeah, but
right, and that's me running her on obsidian, which means that she doesn't even have enough crit to consistently proc that, right? She's only doing that half the time. If I were to switch her to scroll, she'd probably be able to do even more because she'd also get the scroll buff on top, right? And the fact that she can do that with no ER at all, I think that already makes her significantly better than Chengling.
Yeah, I do think that like Zheng Ling's damage without Bennett is like also tragic, but
16k ups.
yeah.
Right?
I do
And
think that it's better, but it's not like compared to units that actually focus on sub-DPS or that even have sub-DPS in their kit like Yelan and then also give a damage buff. Because Mavuika also gives a damage buff. But even then, like...
But Mavuika does give a damage buff, right? She gives scroll, and if you decide to Q and you literally don't hit anything, right? You still get a damage buff. So theoretically, like, she doesn't actually give you 80 because, you know, the thing decreases over time.
Yeah.
But, like, you're going to be getting more than 40% for sure.
You
right?
also have to maximize fighting
all that
spirit
takes
too
is
to get
for
the
you
max
to
buff.
just-
But
Yeah. All that takes is just for you to switch the scroll. And then what teams are you really running her in, right? Like, I would argue that one of her worst case scenarios is you're running a Cheverus team, because she's not going to Vapor or Melt in a Cheverus team.
Yeah.
She still probably is getting hefty buffs from Cheverus. She still probably would hit more than 40k. Right?
She doesn't. Like, I don't know, maybe something's wrong with my Mavuika, but from off-field she really, like, she does 35k or something.
Okay, let's say 35.
Bad damage,
wouldn't
though.
argue 35
Yeah,
is bad, right?
Because that's like
6 hits of 35k. That's 70 times 3.
How often does Nahida hit in her skill duration?
That's gonna be kind of hard to compare because her duration is way higher than Mavuika.
That is true, yeah.
Right, and also depends if whether or not you activated the burst and you have Electro.
Okay, for Nahida,
it's more often.
Yeah, for Nahida I have to specify it's only with Electro. I think Nahida does negative damage if she plays in Bloom. Like she's doing like 16k procs or something. That's no damage.
Yeah. I don't think anyone can argue that Nahida is a good sub-DPS outside of Electro.
Yeah, for sure.
Right, if you don't have Electro on the team, Nahida is just... She exists. You might as well run her on a buffing set. If like Dendro's not the majority of your damage. But this is why I'm like talking about Mavuika, because outside of Mavuika C1, I agree with you, her uptime is not that good. But even with her uptime not being that good, even if we were to argue that her build is going to be 35k with absolutely no buffs and no reaction, that is still good damage. Because once you put buffs in, it's going to be more than 35k. Once you do any form of reaction, it's going to be more than that. Like, you could run around, I'm telling you again, what I was doing just for open world, right? I was running around with my friendship team. It was Charlotte just spamming her camera to apply cryo and Mavuika off field. And it was just decimating people for like close to 100k. Right? So, like, I get what you mean that she's not an insane sub-DPS. Like, if people are arguing that she's like, her sub-DPS is equivalent to a fully buff Xiangling, I agree with you. That's not true. But I don't think her sub-DPS is also bad. Because I don't know if we can compare her to Yelan as well, right? Because with Yelan, you still need energy. Unless you're one-tabbing the enemies with Yelan's E, which you can if you, like, do the proper reaction, let's say.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I feel like her damage is fine for what it is, because you gotta take into account that you're supposed to be pressing Q. Now, I do know that there are a lot of teams where she might not be able to Q every rotation, but when she does Q, that's like what? If she doesn't react it, 200k? Or is it less?
I would say like anywhere from 100. Like me at C2 Mavuika, I typically hit without reacting. Like on a Clarin team, I'm hitting about like 220 on a scroll set.
Yeah,
so
with
like,
C2.
That's C2. So like without C2, that's like a bit less.
I get like 140k or something.
Yeah, I would say like 130. I was thinking like 130, 140k.
Yeah, so that's like, let's say around 150.
Yeah.
On top of whatever damage she's doing off field.
Yeah.
On top of any form of reaction she would get if, let's say, she's doing overload.
Yeah. That's true.
Like,
she could.
Even the overload damage has to be like contributed to her, right? So it's like, I think like her sub DPS obviously leaves more to be desired, but I don't think it's bad. Like, I wouldn't go to the extent of comparing her to Chi in a C6. Like,
I would still compare her to that. But it's just because I think they are just very similar from the way they deal damage. Another like two things I guess that Mavuika, like Mavuika's AoE is just a lot better than like the single target off-field damage she does than that I am comparing her to. So Yelan only like her burst can only hit one enemy, obviously. Furina's AoE isn't all too great. It's obviously not bad, but it's like not all of her hits hit all the enemies. So Mavuika does honestly contribute in AoE, but Nahida also kind of does. So I think that if you get to spread Nahida's damage, I would still say that Nahida's damage is better than Mavuika's. Although, like, Mavuika provides more to the team than Nahida does. Like, 250 EM only for the on-fielder is way worse than Scroll for the entire team and then, like, Mavuika's extra buff. So,
And like we also
It
got to
also
consider
depends,
the
right?
fact
'Cause
that
if we're yeah, sorry, Conky, you go.
I was gonna say like we got to consider the fact that Mavuika doesn't need energy, and so for that thing alone,
yeah, the
for the teams
energy
that she's
thing,
going to
that's
be
true.
on,
The energy
like for the
thing.
team that she's going to be on, that is one of the main reasons why you're probably using like a melt team or maybe even overload team. One of the reasons you're probably using her over someone like Zhang is because you don't have to worry about building like 270 ER just to get a burst every rotation, and so that value alone helps, even if her damage may not be up to scuff, right?
Yeah. I think Zhang Ling is shit in like without Bennett to buff her.
Oh
Yeah.
no!
Yeah.
She does
A
not damage.
theorycrafter this jungling? What is this?
Sorry.
What year are we in? But yeah, the thing I want to say is like the comparison with Nahida. If we're talking Nahida pure spread, like there is no hydro, right? Like we are only allowing her to spread, and she is running a pretty decent build on like let's say Dweebud or Gilded or Golden Troupe. Sure, she probably can compete with Mavuika's damage if not surpass it. But is it fair to compare Nahida in her like optimal scenario with Mavuika not even allowing her to react? Like I feel you should be able to compare her to let's say
Yeah.
a Rise League, right? Where she's enabling reaction or reacting herself.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like if you compare the two, wouldn't technically Mavuika be on par with Nahida if not like surpass her?
Yeah, but the thing is, I feel like these teams are like the teams where Mavuika is actually like off field. Like to me, it's just the Risley team, and like then what else? Like if you play double Hydra or something, and off field Mavuika, but like where do you do that? So I don't really know where you would off field Mavuika. Like that.
I mean, there's
hitting reactions.
I like to, and with times I'm running like Florent Overload, I like to off-field Mavuika. I mean, I have a C2 to be fair, but still, off-field Mavuika there.
Actually,
You understand there are gonna be teams who are gonna be using her off-field in places just as Rosangling replacement because they may have Bennett elsewhere, so they need someone in that slot, right?
I mean, just when like teams where her off-field damage is actually melted or vaped. Like, where does this happen?
What you mean?
Outside of Rise.
I'll tell you something since we're talking about reactions in general.
I would say, but that's kind of.
Ganyo, yeah. What?
Someone in chat is actually mentioning that, like, in Chevrolet's Overload, Mavuika contributes up to like 400k DPR.
Yeah,
400.
Yeah, Vomfi calculate.
400k is I got like 360.
And I'm assuming that's C0 and not C2, right? I don't assume Vomfi is.
No, that's
like.
I don't think that's C2. I think that should be C2 is probably only like 500, maybe 600. I haven't counted my C2 Mavuika off field, but to be fair, I don't give her crazy artifacts because my scroll set pieces are horrible. So she's like a 70-100 ratio. So.
And I don't have Colorant, but from what I know, like Mavuika is Colorant best team, and it's not.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to say it's not close, but it's not like a hot take or anything, right? Like everyone agrees that Mavuika is the best team.
Yeah.
And it's like you got to think to yourself, right? If she's in the best team for Cheveru's overload for coloring, and she's probably gonna be in the best team for Ressa when she comes out, and she's probably in the best team for Melania, and she's in the best team for Kanichi. What's
So
the
saying
cost? Because if
something.
the argument is like that she's not doing enough damage, then she's probably doing something else to be
Yeah,
contending with all the other
this
off-field
point was
players.
purely speaking of her like off-field damage. That was the entire like. She's not
Yeah,
that.
so we're separating like the buffing with and the
I'm
utility with
separating the
from
buffing.
the
Yeah.
You're okay.
But by the
You're
way,
separating
just
the utility
yeah.
and part of
In
her.
that case, fair. Yeah.
to talk about the 400k DPR, that's still less than Yelan, Furina, Emily. Like that's
Elon
why
doing more than 400k DPR on Fav. Wait, Elon does more than 400k DPR on Fav.
Okay, yeah, I kind of assume Aqua always, but 400k Mavuika sounds like she has her thing.
400k.
I don't know.
I
We
do.
have to
I
check
feel like you could
Bonfi's
do.
scouts.
I feel like you can do 400k, maybe at least like 360 or so, 370 or so.
Emily with Sig is doing 800k.
Yo,
Oh.
let's go the Emily shout out.
Okay, Emily is just kind of.
NAB is like the
Or
pinnacle
what
of sub
Emily-
DPSs
That's
though,
true.
right? At the current moment, so like it's hard to compare to her.
Yeah. True.
Okay, we can just move on. Then just leave a question mark. I still stand by my. The thing is, it's just a misconception that she's like on the high end of sub DPS. I don't think her sub DPS is negligible. It's a nice addition, but it's nothing to bad chest. That's my point.
I mean, if we were making a list of top 10, like off-field damage dealers, and
Would she make it?
We should.
Like,
we should. Do
she
that,
wouldn't be
honestly,
in the
kind of
top
fun.
3. I'll give you that for sure.
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah. But
would be the
all
top
right,
3.
you said you wanted to move to the next
Yeah.
misconception.
You can like. Since we're circling
We can
in the
switch it up if
round.
you want, or I can go. Up to you guys.
No, you can go, Martin.
All right. I have a few here. Let's spice things up a little bit. Since we're talking about Mavuika, I guess let's mention this. Obviously, this is related to spoilers, so warning to anyone. It's Abyss lineup spoilers specifically. In the next Abyss, or the one after, I'm not quite sure. Whichever is the one where they decided it would be really funny to put 2 waves of elite enemies before bosses.
Yeah, it's the next one.
Yeah. The DPS required is gonna be substantially higher than usual.
Oh yeah,
And
I'm worried.
if we're doing just, again, napkin math, I've mentioned this in a previous episode, it should be around, usually most Abyss is around 30k, 35k. I actually sent you a meme, Saga.
I'm supposed to show it now, okay.
Yeah, if you want.
It's
Like,
time.
most Abysses usually don't require an insane amount of DPS. They require somewhere, let's say, around 35. If I want to be generous, it could be 40. That Abyss is gonna need at least minimum 45. And while that doesn't matter to the new characters, that does matter to older units, right? Like, we're talking Ching Aggravate, we're talking like just Diluc without Plunge, we're talking to like Amber Melt, you know? Like, all the teams that could theoretically clear, but they required a lot of dedication and a lot of like mechanical skill and like game knowledge. I'm worried that they won't be able to clear. Because they could already barely scrap like a clear with very like dedicated, let's say, players, for example, like Fufu for Amber. And then there is a guy called Kin Roach, I believe. He does a clear with Solo Ganyu almost every Abyss, and he does a clear always with the OG DPSs, like the Luke and Kiching.
Yeah.
So, like, I was thinking about that, and I then realized something. 45k DPS is like 3 times less than the damage Mavuika does in her premium team. So the question now becomes the misconception here becomes, it's fine to have the DPS increase since we increase this threshold of like damage dealers by that much, or it's not fine because of older units. That's kind of like the misconception I feel like some people have, that they say, oh, like it's fine for DPS to increase because like Mavuika can still do a bazillion damage, right? But it's like, is that true?
That's a horrible take.
Yeah,
if anyone
that's a
says
very
that. Holy.
bad thing.
That's legit just saying, oh, we want power creep in the game. Every new DPS should be stronger than last, and the Abyss should scale up to the newest DPS. That's how we hit Star Rail,
God.
and people are quitting Star Rail. So
Yeah.
no. So I'm
and
worried for
this
the
is credits to JStream, by the way, for this like quote unquote half a meme, half a have an actual like serious take. It's like, if you see on the graph, most units already can clear things, and like Natlan units, as you can see, like they have way more than enough damage to clear. So that's like the argument that people were using to push the narrative that like it's fine for Abyss to increase the damage threshold. And as someone who means the Luke and Kaching, it is a bit worrying. Like, obviously, if you can just run Shen Yun with the Luke and you'll be fine, and with Kaching you probably could run Shilohin with her signature and you'll be maybe okay, depending on like the shield requirements, if there's like any element requirements or like weird mechanics. But yeah, that's something that I wanted to mention. I guess it's not really that much of a misconception, because you guys are saying like people just shouldn't be saying that.
Yeah.
Period.
I don't know if anyone is saying that, they are probably the minority, I feel. Because I don't think anyone really wants it to cater to the new DPS. Because, like I said, that's how we get games like Star Rail, where everyone starts critting because the game is they're really leaning into the power creep.
Yeah. I guess honestly, what you're saying makes sense due to the event, right? Because the recent event hasn't been like.
Oh yeah.
It was not received well, to say the least.
It was not received well. People were like, "Oh,
yeah." A lot of people don't like the banner thing.
Yeah.
The name card. I guess that's a short misconception.
I think the funny thing is, like, I don't think any of the like sweaty players that got the name card like cared about the name card, but the people that were like playing for aesthetics and stuff, they would like the name card, didn't get the name card because they can't clear.
Yeah, no, you know what's funny about that event? No, I've always like. I always felt like my Yoimiya, my free to play account has always been felt stronger than my Arlecchino, probably because she's C5 and I give her all the best supports. But still, and then in this event, I got to like tower or floor 15 with Yoimiya and got to floor 19 with Arlecchino. Yeah, no, I was like, shit, I can't even use her. Yeah, no, I'm worried. This is something I just want to talk about. I'm worried that like about this direction that they're going, because I see the Abyss after this one, the HP is still inflated.
Yeah.
And we have that one boss again, the boss that we're not too sure if it's gonna be required Outland units or not. The Automatron thing from Outland. It's gonna have like 5 million in the 5.5 or is it 5.4B or 5.5B, I think. I can't remember which number it was, but it's the one after the one we're getting.
Yeah.
It's gonna have like 5 million HP, which is freaking insane. I hope they don't continue to increase the HP like this, because it could send Genshin down a bad road.
Yeah, the HP multiplier went from 300 to 375 from the like next to the
crazy,
next,
bro.
like the next one that's the next after that one.
Which is so weird, because like when they increased it, people like try to like warn, or content creator try to warn the community like, careful, like they're increasing the thing. But then the Abyss after, they decreased it back to normal. But then they increased it again. And they keep like shifting it all the way from like 250 to like 300 to like 375. It's like I have a theory, right? It's like a crackhead theory, like a tinfoil theory, that they're not sticking to the number they want, so people don't say, oh, like this is permanent, right? Like it's a smart tactic to like increase it and then decrease it. That way people are like, oh, okay, it's not permanent. And then eventually they're gonna keep like, increasing it between 350 and 375. and people are just gonna be like, okay, well, this is the norm, right? But it won't have as much backlash as if they just jumped straight from 200 to 375.
Oh, what?
Like consistent.
Yeah.
What if they just decrease it because they know they can't sell Mizuki if she can't clear? So they decrease it so Mizuki
Honestly.
can clear.
True. Dude, the thing is, as much as we like to like meme on Mizuki, she gave us an Eerie Abyss. We
Yeah,
can
true.
thank her for
It's
that.
so peak.
Yeah,
Eerie
honestly,
Abyss.
yeah. I actually really enjoyed this Abyss.
Thank
dude.
you, Mizuki.
Peak
I get it.
Abyss.
Praise Mizuki. Best Abyss we've had in ages.
Yeah.
Okay, should we move on to
Alright.
the next take?
Yes, please.
Okay, Kinkle, your turn.
We'll make it so my takes.
Holy shit, we are 1
Okay,
hour
so-
in. Oh no. We are like
Holy shit.
6 takes done
Yeah,
or something.
this is why
5
I'm
takes.
like, we should probably speed up. 5 takes times
Okay,
3.
okay.
I don't know if that's
Quick
gonna
round.
happen.
Imagine if like Bumpy or so and Flip were both in here too, we'd have 25 takes and we'd have like probably another 2 hours to go, dude. Oh, dude. Anyway, my next take is people. I keep seeing this still in discussion places where people keep shitting on Weapon Banner. I really feel people should stop doing that.
Yeah.
It has a lot of value. People don't realize.
Especially after the
Um,
change, yeah.
Yeah, especially after the change. But even before it had value. A lot of people don't realize when it comes to Weapon Banner, there are so many weapons that are usable on multiple characters that for certain teams, it can be an even better upgrade to get a weapon that can buff either your current team or multiple teams than to get a new character for that team. Like case in point, Elegy, Key, certain weapons for DPS is like like Homa, Sucrose Stans. Like that ones that can just be used on so many characters that prevents you from needing to get a signature on your current characters that
Yeah.
you use or even future ones in the future. It's a really nice upgrade
Yeah.
that can save you a lot of primos. And people don't realize that.
I think Aqua especially, like I think
Yeah,
I noticed honestly this sounds like very Aqua shilling, but I noticed the difference between accounts that have Aqua and accounts that don't. Like if you play Auroron, not Auroron, Chaska, I mean. Chaska, Linny, Ganyu, Child, like all of these characters are so good with Aqua, and then for Yelan, since Yelan's best teams are Double Hydra at the moment, she basically always runs Aqua. Otherwise she runs Fav, and like it's like her damage is kind of just bad. So I would
You know
just always
Honorable mention.
I
Slingshot.
actually almost yes, slingshot, yes. Please.
Slingshot.
The amount
My
of people
God.
I see not using that weapon is every time I review a build and it's like Yoimiya using Skydark, I'm like, brother, please take that off, put on Slingshot. Or,
oh yeah,
yeah,
true.
put on Slingshot. It's better. It's so much better. Anyway,
Like the thing
um,
about Slingshot is because I'm using it on my build, my Yelan is like top 70 or something, or like top 50 because Akasha doesn't have Slingshot, and I'm just staring at the leaderboard like, dude, my build on Yelan is actually really good, but I don't have a 5-star bow, so my best option is just Slingshot.
yeah. I actually
It's
made a
horrible.
mention to one of my friends with a C6 Elan. I'm like, dude, what if someone got C6 Elan and just decided not to pull a signature weapon, so they just won't Slingshot as the weapon? It would actually not be bad for C6 Elan.
Yeah,
It really
true.
wouldn't. The weapon is actually really not that bad. Like
Um,
people chill White Tassel on Arlecchino all the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, Slingshot is literally the same thing.
White
It's-
Tassel
it's so good.
is so sad because of the base attack. It's like
Yeah.
he has no
Yeah,
attack.
but when are you playing Arlecchino without Bennett?
Yeah,
Let's be honest here.
I mean that's true, but it's still like I feel like it's still feels impactful, you know.
Yeah.
If you play her without Bennett, for sure, it suffers. If, like, let's say, God forbid, you need to get out of the Bennett zone for whatever reason, then yeah, White Tassel is not it. But if you're locking her to Bennett anyway, which most probably you should, I'd argue White Tassel really devalues her signature, because Arlecchino's signature is not that great. Let's be honest.
Outside of Arlecchino, it's very bad. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why
And
I
even for her, like, isn't it worse than her C1 by a substantial amount?
C1
Yeah,
is
her
kind of stupid.
C1 is
C1's like
crazy.
it's like a
So,
30% damage increase or something like that.
You really wouldn't want to go for it unless, like, you're a die-hard Arlecchino main and you already got C1 technically, or you just want the drip, right? But then we're not talking theory crafting, we're talking field crafting.
Yeah.
Also, I just want to say this, Flip. My opinion, LG is a better weapon for Yelan than Aqua, but and a good chunk of teams. I don't know. I found more value in LG than I do Aqua. I've rarely used Onulon unless I'm doing unless I have LG on someone else, I run LG Onulon. It's just I don't know, man.
I think like Elegy is a good weapon to have, and it's nice that it works on Yelan, but even if I had Elegy, I would use Aqua more. I just mainly use Yelan in teams where her damage is very important, like Hu Tao or Mono Hydro, so I guess I just really want to play Aqua.
I mean, anytime I use Hu Tao, I have to make sure she's buffed to the maximum, so I use like Key, Furina, Elegy alone. But that's just me. Listen, my Hu Tao would be doing like 1 million on burst and 300k dark deck. It's fine.
That's a lot of damage, yeah.
Yeah, that's with like C2 Sitlali and C2 Furina and R3 Elegy. So anyway, but yeah, no, point still stands. Weapon banner has a lot more value, especially now. It actually is easier to get a 5-star weapon than it is to get a character right now. Assuming you use your fate point, but assuming you use your fate point, because if you miss the fate point, then you lose the fate point. Unlike how you keep your guarantee on character banner. But
here's the thing: should I play the devil's advocate here as someone who's like free to play?
Yeah. What's your take?
I think it's like 2 or 3 things. I'll try to mention them quickly. It's not good for theater. It's much better to get characters for theater, and since theater is literally giving you as much primo gems as Abyss, you could argue it's not like theater is just as important as Abyss, basically, in terms of just you trying to, get as much primos out of the game as possible. The second thing is, a lot of the time, the units are significantly better than the weapons, especially new units like Sitilali and Shilonen. Like, imagine a signature Mavuika, but without Sitilali, or without like Shilonen. Like, sure, there are alternatives like Diona or Rosaria, but it's not going to be.
You should definitely get the team first.
Yeah. My argument isn't necessarily to always pull like signatures for characters. That's not my argument, because I don't do that myself. It's just that the thing is, there are certain weapons that have quite a bit of value to pull, like say like maybe a Homa or an Aqua, where rather than just going straight for characters only, because they have universal value. Right?
Yeah, flexible weapons, I agree with you, but inflexible weapons. The issue is, right, like, let's be honest, how many weapons are flexible? I think Hoyo learned from their quote-unquote mistake, which is making weapons really flexible, because most weapons are really, really not that flexible. Like, the exceptions would be Homa, Aqua, Staff of Scarlet Sands, and then buffing weapons like Elegy and, Freedom.
I argue against that, actually. There are quite a few weapons that are quite universal. There's Haran, there's Chiori's weapon, Mavuika's weapon's pretty flexible. Obviously, part of the passive, some of these weapons, part of the passives don't work because they have certain conditions. Chaska's weapon's pretty good too. But they have passives that work on other characters that give them, if you have a rank, let's say you like to use, I don't know, Ganyu, Lenny, Chaska, and Tainari. Then you can just get Chaska's weapon using all 4 of them, right? Or let's say you like to use Clorind, Ayato, who else? Is it just Clorind Ayato that use that? Maybe that's a bad example for Haran. But I mean, like I'm saying, there's just a lot of weapons, even for that are catered towards their DPS. Their signature weapons that are catered to their DPS that can be used on a range of other characters that give them better value for pulling, right?
Here's a small counter argument. My issue with Haran is there's a lot of characters that either want to run Marishosei as their best set, or they want to run Obsidian.
Yeah, I already
all of a sudden you're overcapping crit.
Yeah, Haran's kind of a bad example because it's actually not as universal.
Right.
But
the thing about Catalyst weapon, for example, let's say the ones that are supposed to be flexible, is a lot of the time you just have Wetset. And I know Wetset is horrible. I know Wetset has like the RNG thing, but like it's still there. A bunch of people have it. And like the third point I just wanted to mention, so we can like progress forward, is the 4 stars that you get from the weapon banner are usually not characters, they're weapons. And let's be frank, most weapons on the weapon banner, if they're not called Fav, they're really not that great.
I would disagree.
Like, you have exceptions, like obviously Witset, like obviously Sacrificial Fragment, like obviously certain other weapons, right? But usually there is a bell in there, There is like Alley Hunter in there. There is like Dragon Bane for number 2 bazillion to exist there. So
Wait, Alley
like,
Hunter's the bow, right?
I believe yes.
Yes, I thought
Unless
that was a weapon.
unless it's the sword for Bennett that has really high attack.
There's like quite a few characters who
no, I
use
think
Alley
that's Ali
Hunter,
Flash.
actually. Alley
Yeah.
Flash is the one
So it's
that,
like-
that people seem to use on Bennett, but
So that's like my other issue with bullying on the weapon banner, that like you're most probably gonna get weapons, and quite a few, I don't know if I would argue it's half or less, are not that good. So what I want to say is, right, if you're a new player, if you're a player who's struggling to clear Abyss, I feel a lot of the time it's better to have more units to deal with different elemental checks and to
Well,
deal with
obviously, yeah.
different scenarios than it is to build for weapon banner. And the question becomes, how many teams should you be able to craft before you start looking at signatures, right? And the more I look at like newer characters like Chavarus, like let's say to some extent Emily, to some extent again Eon-san in the future, right? Like there's a lot of the like really good characters that kind of make signature not as desirable, even though the fate points are like you said, is decreased. So I always told people, like, if you can already clear the content and you have like, let's say 3 to 4 teams, right, that can deal with different scenarios, sure, you should definitely go for signature. Stop bullying characters, because guess what, a DPS doesn't do anything on your account if you don't play them,
yeah.
right? And I feel like a lot of people are gonna feel that in a future Abyss with nuclear land.
Yeah, a certain Abyss coming soon.
Yeah. but that's a discussion for another time. So yeah,
We
we should probably move on.
Yeah, we should, but I just want to say one more thing, like regarding signatures. We still need I think a universal like catalyst, or like
Yeah, I was
a
literally
5-star
thinking that, yeah.
catalyst, or like a supportive catalyst even. I know
That would be amazing.
the watch, the shield thing, but it's like only for Lanyan and Sidlali, sadly. But it's a
Yeah, that's
really
nice,
good
nice,
weapon.
It's good, it's just not universal enough.
Yeah, if we got a millennial movement, that's like a catalyst, I think that could be a pretty big deal that
Yeah,
people could be aiming
Yeah.
for.
yeah.
Okay.
This is where I come in and start bat chesting TDDS. What do you mean? The greatest support weapon of all times, half a Bennett worth.
So true.
That also gives you,
Yep.
like, makes your rotations like so weird sometimes. But
It really does. Usually with TDDS, I just don't bother doing rotations. Like, I on purpose delay myself up because I really want to get that 50% attack or like 48.
Damn.
But yeah,
Okay, I guess.
it can be very fun.
My next take, I mean, it's something that I've also discussed very often. Furina, fanfare gain. The thing is, like,
Damn it.
one of...
that was one of my takes. Fuck.
Oh no.
Kind
told
of.
you
Not,
guys are
we'll see what
quite
you're about to
fun.
say. We'll see what you're about to say. It might not be the same take.
I mean, it's very easy. Like, the difference between a team-wide healer, for example, Janyan, the buff like you get from Furina is significantly different from the buff you get for when you play Gelone and Bennett, or
Yeah.
other like Cookie, for example. Cookie is even worse regarding that.
Yeah,
because...
Cookie just doesn't heal much at all, unfortunately.
Yeah, and for Cookie especially, she doesn't like, you want to use her skill right before Hytham's uptime, so you don't like, you literally can't heal anyone else. So the uptime, like, it's just very uncomfortable for Furina's buff. And I still see this in comment section. Furina is the best character in the game because she has I saw this comment today. Furina is the best character in the game because she does so much damage from off field and she gives 75% damage to the entire team. And I'm like, did you read her kit?
I actually realize a lot of people, far less people know how to use Furina than you might think. Like not many people. They just think she gives a buff and that's it. But
Yeah,
it's
the
just a lot more
funniest
to
thing
it. That's
is
the problem.
the funniest thing is they just assume Constellations, I think, because they call her a healer and a damage dealer. You cannot make her a healer and a damage dealer before C6. What?
You know what's funny? I don't think they assume Constellation. I think they just see the fact that she can heal and assume that's something that's used in her kit, which
Yeah.
no one ever fucking uses her healer mode. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
My take is done.
All right. Get ready to defend your take. But no. So here's the thing. In terms of fanfare, yeah, she can struggle here and there, but it's not like you can't play around it, and it's not like it's not worth playing around. So let's say you're running Bennett, run Maiden Bennett. Sure, you're missing out on Noblesse, but it's not like it's impossible not to run them. You could adjust your rotation, right? Like, for example, Shilonen should be going first. I've seen a lot of people, like, they start with Furina because she has a longer duration, right? And then they do the Shilonen stuff. It's like, no. Start with Shilonen. That way she heals herself as she's buffing, 1 tick. And then she goes into Furina, heals her probably 2 ticks, maybe, right? 1 to 2 usually. And then it goes on to the next character, and then it goes on to the first character, right? Like, you can still play around Furina's fanfare generation.
Yeah, you can. For Shilonen.
But it's worth it. Like, in terms of DPS and in terms of DPR, it's always going to be worth it to run, like, you know, healing sets, let's say, or to switch your rotation up to get the extra fanfare, because it's going to be substantial.
I think in terms of sheet DPS, it may be worth it, but in terms of like, which I often do, I often speedrun it, is a very uncomfortable team, a very uncomfortable thing to do, to like play around the team, like the team's rotation, and then like make Shilonen heal everyone. Obviously, in some teams, I think it's very worth it, like very flexible teams, but in some teams, especially on Bennett, you want as much Bennett uptime on your carry as possible, otherwise your carry doesn't do damage, or like does significantly less damage, because for Linny, for example, if he loses 1 charge attack, his damage tanks. If Navia loses the 3rd skill, her damage also, like, if it's not Bennett buff, then you notice that in the gameplay. And I think Shilonen is the like best example for a character that's like flexible, but it's just Shilonen being good, I guess. I think Shilonen is the closest that like in terms of fanfare generation, she's definitely the closest to a party-wide healer, because you can make Shilonen, because she also heals a ton. Like, her ticks are very huge. I noticed that if I played the team recently, Furina, Nahida, Yaimiko, Shilonen. I don't know why. I just wanted to play a Yaimiko team, and I think it's honestly, it wasn't bad. And I noticed that on Miko, because Miko has no HP, like she has no defense and no HP, she literally dies in 1 hit. But if you get, if you have a decent amount of fanfare already, and because Furina does, like, her fanfare converts into healing bonus, if my Yaimiko gets healed, like 1 tick and she's almost full. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Another thing I wanted to mention is real quick, like Constellations, because at least from the data we can get online, or from the data we have online, it seems more people own
C2
Constellations than people that don't. Not even
Really,
C2, just like C1 and above, right? Because let's be honest, at C1 and above, the issues you're talking about are no longer issues, for the most part, right? Like, you're getting the front fanfare, you're getting a higher amount of fanfare, so even with 0 healing, you're still getting like what, 30 damage percent?
Yeah, 30%. Yeah, you're getting
somewhere
30,
around that, right?
Yes, 30%.
Probably more. And it's like any amount of fanfare more than that is gonna be even better and better, and that already makes her like a unit that, like, the requirement for you to heal, it can kind of be ignored. Like, let's say in Mono Geo, where like good luck getting any relevant amount of healing out of Goro, like she ends up actually becoming better than 4-man Geo, right? Assuming you're using a second DPS with Goro Ito or Goro Noel. And the other thing about C1 and C2 in general is a rotation that I saw, mainly Jamie, so shout out to him, that he showed for speedrunners. This was like the beauty of that, is that speedrunners would literally do like the Numa mode for healing right before they press the Q animation, and once the Q animation is over, they switch back to damage mode. And that usually allows 1 to 2 ticks on Furina, and that usually is more than enough for fanfare at C1, so you don't actually have to worry about like a really good healer or even any like relevant amount of healer. Like you can probably get by Prototype Amber, which again is the third thing I want to talk about, which is Prototype Amber. A lot of Catalyst users could use Prototype Amber, and the team-wide healing end up being really good. So for Furina C1 and Furina C2, and maybe I'm chilling Furina a bit too much here, but like because so many people have these constellations, I feel like it's relevant to mention constellations here. It's not really an issue anymore, right? It's only for C0 Furina, and like I already said with C0 Furina, it's a bit clunky, but you can still adjust it. And you could even theoretically do that speedrunning thing, right, where you switch to healing mode. And again, I'm stressing so much speedrunning is because when you tell people to switch into healing mode and then burst and then switch back, people are like, dude, I'm wasting time. It's like, no, you're not. Because speedrunners literally use that method, which means that on paper, it is faster than not doing it. Like the amount of benefits you get out of it overweigh the extra second, let's say, where you're switching back and forth on Furina.
The healing strat, yeah, but I think it's very I don't see it often. It's like an Ayaka thing that people do on Ayaka, but sometimes it can be bad. Like it can be awkward, like regarding application. For example, if you, I guess, need the. I just don't like it. Also extends her field time. I don't see that strat being used very often. And regarding
it does extend her field time, but by like 1 second or less. And like I said, usually the fanfare generation that you get out of it, like the damage bonus, the front load of the fanfare generation, is worth the like half a sec or sec. Because her animation to switch between the modes doesn't take that long, right?
Yeah, and regarding constellations, I think, yeah, people often pull C1 and C2, but if we are just assuming, or like we just assume it as given, then we should also, when we talk about Shiori, we should also just assume C1 on Shiori, or like talk about Shiori as if most people have her C1, because a lot of people actually have C1 now.
Yeah, for sure. It's just more that, you know, like Furina, I'd like to think is more of a universal case than Shiori.
Yeah, but that's just
As in,
because
like,
a lot of
more
people pulled for her, not that
yeah.
she's necessarily.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. I get what you're coming from. Like, I'd be comfortable, for example, talking about Novelet C1, right? Because
Yeah.
again, the data shows that more people have Novelet C1 than people who don't. And again, this is online data. I'm not claiming it's representative of every single player and it's actual good database. It's just from what we can tell online. It seems people bull these characters C1 quite often, right? So there's a good amount of the player base that have access to these things we're talking about.
Flip is not going to like this section.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I guess I do agree. I just think that people can be very not smart. Like if constellations or like stuff is overhyped, they will go for things like well, what was like?
Dude, I was drinking water. I almost laughed because I remember the C1 Risley.
Yeah. A lot of people said that Risley was unplayable without C1, which yeah. Guess where that
like
led
to be fair, I'm one of the people who still think, for the most part, you still want his C1 and it's still really good. But if we're just talking cheats, and if we're just talking like you're willing to put in the combo and be somewhat of a greasy gamer, yeah, sure. The C1 was overblown when he was released. People made it sound like, oh, you bolt C1, you do like 150% more damage on Rice League, which is like, no. But for most players that are casuals, I think the C1 does make a huge difference.
Yeah, it does make his
Because
gameplay more fun, I would
Yeah.
say. Like, it's more engaging and probably also more comfortable. Also,
I
for
would,
sure.
Nahida
I would
C2.
feel that probably more. Yeah, I need to see too. Yeah.
Nahida C2 was so like it was, people said that like Nahida C2 is like makes the bloom teams and the hyper bloom teams go from insane to even more insane, and I feel so bad for the people that have C2 Nahida now, because like what's the electro character at the moment that wants Nahida C2, or like which
Ka-ching!
Okay, yeah, Kuching, I guess. But even
Ka-ching,
Kuching
Michael.
can like get very not insane, but like insane for Kuching standards, like results with
For sure. Yeah.
overload teams with Mavuika. If you have
Wait, I thought you were talking about Dendro. Does she do good in Overload? Because I tried her a few times with Chevy Z0, to be fair, and it just seemed significantly worse than Dendro.
I
Because
feel
her
she would perform
multipliers
better
are just
in.
not there.
I kind of just a friend of mine and me get better results with. The thing is, I also use Sarah. Like I use Sarah Chevy Mavuika, and I have Chevy C6. And with that, I get better results with Overload than I get with like not using Fischl. I don't use Fischl in Kitching Aggravate because I need to the agenda. But like I guess if you used Fischl with Kitching and like not let Kitching be the carry because you hate Kitching. No, I'm joking, but like if you want to play Kitching Fischl, I think that would probably be better. Because Kitching's like hyper is sad.
That's to be fair what I'm doing. I'm just treating Ka-ching as like
okay.
number 3 driver for official.
Yeah, but then the
Yeah.
team is
So yeah.
the team is rather single target focused. So you would want the
Yeah, for sure.
AOE damage, right? The AOE Kitching damage.
Which exactly, right? That's what I was gonna say, right? Nahida and Kitchen take care of AoE, and Fischl decimates the single target. Easy. You will surely get a swirl with Kazuha with Nahida on the team. I promise, bro. Trust me.
This reminds me of
You
the
actually
like.
can. There are ways you can guarantee a scroll.
There are, for
Yeah,
sure.
there
There
are.
are
Like jokes
ways you can
aside,
guarantee what you're
there are
doing.
certain rotations that can guarantee it. You could even like the best one I found is, believe it or not, a single normal attack on Fischl.
Interesting.
Usually,
Like,
if you're fast
I-
enough for what I've come, if you're fast enough with like official ear burst, you can actually get a swirl pretty consistently.
Yeah,
but-
that as well, right? But that depends more on like the Trikarma
Yeah.
procs, whether they
Yeah.
line up or not. That's why like I've seen things like Blunge, for example, with Kaching, or Explode her Stiletto, or you delay the rotation, or like all
Yeah.
of those sound cool and all, and they're probably a bit more shade DPS, but like for comfort, for me, I just do a single normal attack on Fischl. If that doesn't work, by the time I switch to Kazuha, guess what? Kazuha does another normal attack. There you go. There's Electro now. Because the Trikarma isn't going to be able to hit that frequent, even with like the burst being crowned.
Yeah.
So
Also,
it's fine. But below C6 Fischl, that might not work. I'm going to be
Yeah.
Oh
honest.
well, yeah, no, yeah.
But below
C6,
C6
yeah.
Fischl also isn't good in
It's
aggravate.
just very good.
It's
Oh no,
kinda,
I'm
very good.
like she's okay, but like she's not doing any like she's not doing a lot of damage. She's just doing
Yeah.
C6 is very important. Was I? Okay.
I just want to go back to Furina for a sec.
Yeah, sure.
Like we talk about like the difference between like sheets and like casuals for other characters. We didn't really. I felt like we looked over for Furina just for the sake of the fact, or I would say like Martin looked over for the sake of the fact that we could say there are combos you can do to circumvent the issues with C0 Furina. But this goes into the one of the takes I had, or the discussion I had was that I feel like Furina just isn't for every account, simply for the fact that she doesn't perform super well with every DPS, right? And
Does she?
I feel like having her on my, this comes from my experience on my free to play account, pulling her, thinking that she would be a great upgrade for characters like Arlecchino and Yumiya and Ayaka, and she just performed worse. in the teams I played her
Yeah.
without like actually trying
I
to make her work.
I
it
agree
just-
on those three for sure.
I,
Yeah,
I just
all
didn't
these
feel like
three
it.
characters don't want
Yeah.
Furina.
And so like there are a lot of people out there who like to think that Furina is the support you need for like every team. There's just a lot of people, right? And I do feel like that's a bit of a misconception. She's just not for everyone.
Regarding
And
continue.
no, I'm pretty much.
Oh,
done.
okay.
You go.
Regarding that, Sejef, I'm not joking, but Sejef made a pretty good take, for once. No, I'm joking. But
Wow.
he said
Wow.
he said that Furina at C0 allows works with a bunch of characters, but she's not really better for a lot of characters than they are like best team, unless she has her early constellations. Then she's like she will be the best option. But at that point, you could also consider going for cons on the carry that you're using, especially if it's like Chaska or like Mavuika or like any modern Natlan carry. Their constellations are great, and for even for characters like Navia that don't necessarily have great constellations, you can still consider Gilonen C2 or R1 instead of like going for Furina or her constellations.
So the thing about Furina, right? The Jeff take. I have a friend of mine, right, who plays Yumiya. He's a Yumiya main. He has Raiden. He plays Raiden here and there. So recommending to him Furina doesn't make sense because he's like, didn't play during the time Furina came out. He took a break.
Yeah.
But here's what I think a lot of content creators are forgetting. He also plays Dea, and he also plays Sidwin, and he also plays Diluc, and he also plays insert multiple characters here. Like, I agree with you guys. There are certain characters that Furina is no longer good, especially at C0, and she's only better at C1, or like competitive, let's say, at C1. But we gotta remember that, first of all, a lot of people have Furina. So if you tell me that like their Furina C1 is gonna equal like a certain other character, well, it's better to get the C1 because you end up getting similar result, and it also increases the other characters. Like, the reason I think Furina is so valuable, at least to me, is not because she's the top theoretical best DPS in the game. She used to be at some point, and she's no longer is, for like the most part, let's say, but because of how much she makes any team in the game, for the most part, really good and really competitive. Like, all you need is you bought Furina, you bought a decent healer, and now whatever carry you're playing, they're gonna do more damage. And Furina is gonna be able to contribute a significant amount of damage into your team, probably somewhere around what's her face? The Dice Girl, Yalon, right? And it's like, so many people are fixated on, like content creators specifically, are fixated on like, is she the best for this? 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 Well, okay, she's not, but like, what about all the other characters that people play, right? Like, what about the people who play Shinyan? What about the people who play Ito? What about the people who play Noel? What about the people who play DPS Lanyan or DPS, I don't know, Linny? Or not Linny, I mean Lynette, right? Like, there are so many characters that Furina just enables them to be able to do things that I think her value isn't anymore, like she's the top best DPS, as much as she bulls out so many characters that couldn't really compete in the meta, and she bulls out so many healers, for example, like Jean and Sayu, from being really not that good into actually being a really decent option, right? So I feel like if you're not a player who's only fixated on like the top 3 teams in the game and the only thing you care about is the highest possible DPS, if you happen to play any character that ended up getting to some extent power crept or they're not as strong, Furina is actually a great option still, even at C0.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And if you have C1, then it makes things better. Because I know a lot of people that have C1 Furina or C2, and they just play Citalali. And only Citalali. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But like, you could still put Furina in the team, and you're not going to see that much of a decrease in DPS. And I'm using TGS calcs, as a reference, I believe he showed either C1 or C2 Furina doing around 112 or 117k, which is for reference, CT Lolly at C0 does like 120 for Mavuika's like premium team, right? So you're losing like 3k DBS by using a C2 Furina, let's say, or a C1 Furina. Like, it's not that bad, right? You can then take CT Lolly and give it to Garming, or give it to Diluc Plunge, right? Like, that's just my personal take, right? Is that we need to stop looking at the top of the top and consider how versatile she is for the other characters in the meta.
Yeah, and like, that's I agree with that. The main one, like, being is it's like she's not like, if you pull her, she's not a net negative to your account. She's very valuable. But my thing is that what people need to understand is that there's not every person's account is going to need to pull Furina at a certain time because they're not using DPSs that she benefits well.
Yeah.
Right. That's my main take. It's not that you should never pull her. She's not that valuable. She's still extremely valuable. She's a great character to pull. Just that she isn't as supremely universal as people might think she is. That's my take.
If I may mention one last small thing, I need to remind everyone here about flying enemies. Do you guys know how good Furina is against flying enemies?
Well, yeah.
Not only is she capable to hit, for example, shielded flying enemies like the Byro Dragon, right? She also can shut down the Iron Drake.
That's very hard to do, but yes, she can do that.
It is very hard to do, but what
RNG.
I've actually noticed for a lot of people, there are two things, right, that I want to talk about when it comes to that. Is real quick, the boss, you can actually position yourself in a certain place, and if you do the correct actions, so like you start the key, right, and you just press E and like switch or something like that, right, you can get it to always shut him down consistently, as long as like he decides to do the chest attack. And while sure that might require a few resets and people might not be able to do that, there is things you could do, right, as like, let's say, a speedrunner or more hardcore player, to make it consistent, or a lot more consistent, right? It comes down to the enemy AI rather than it comes down to Furina's like AI. And the other thing is, a lot of the times I've seen people in Imaginarium Theater, for example, right, there would be like the small Drake, he would fly up, and all of a sudden he just drops by himself, right? Like, elite enemies that are capable of flight because they have closer hitboxes for the weak point, Furina, I feel like 7 times, I want to say, out of 10, will just shut them down.
Oh yeah.
Right? So, like, the utility of Furina being able to deal with flying enemies like the Wolf Lord, like, insert any flying enemy here, and also being able to deal with, I'm sorry to remind people of this PTSD boss, the Worms. She's just able to just go there, like, her bets will automatically target him, even if he's, like, really far away. That's something that other characters don't have. Because a lot of the time people will compare her to Yolon. A lot of the time people will compare her to this and that. Let's not forget Furina has automated bets that can deal with flying enemies, can deal with enemies across the field, and she applies off-field Hydro. And outside of Kokomi and outside of Ayato's Burst, let's say, I wouldn't bet on them releasing another off-field Hydro character. Because I've seen a lot of content creators, I don't want to name names, but like, let's say, for example, Jallo, right? Talking about like, oh, if they release a character in the future that applies off-field Hydro. That would be great. That would be fantastic. But there's no indication that the company actually wants to do that, right? Like, there's a lot of units that had a niche and no one touched their niche for a very long time, like Kazuha, for example, right? Like, for the longest time, also, you could argue official. Like, I don't think they want to step over their Archons. And I know that's hard to say, because, like, technically Lanya and Citlali mocked Zhongli off his teams, and, like, Venti has been mocked by Kazuha since long ago, and you can argue Veresa is gonna kind of deal with Raiden. But, like, for the most part, right, I wouldn't rely on Future Impact, is what I'm trying to tell people. Like, I wouldn't recommend you play Future Impact, is what I'm saying.
I just want to counter argument to that main point, is that looking at future leaks for characters that might be coming out, I have a feeling, says Naya, or the next region might focus a bit more on freeze teams, which would indicate we might be getting more Hydro characters that deal with certain things. So I don't know if that point is. I have a feeling we're leading towards some sort of freeze-esque meta in the future, or cryo Hydro meta in the future. So
regarding
Yeah.
regarding that, we had a league that's like a certain freeze
yeah,
character,
yeah.
and the thing is, I think they won't focus on more Furina teams for a while. Like giving Furina teams, the thing is we still need to remember that at C0 she still needs some kind of healing, but they can very easily release or even at the moment, if we think about that unit, I don't think they would want to play Furina in their team because there's no comfortable healer that you can like fit in if it's double cryo and then hydro. Like what was the restriction? I forgot. But even at
The
the
restriction
moment,
was only supposedly hydro and cryo enemy characters.
yeah, and you need 3, right? And then at least 1 of each. And the problem is just that even like at the moment in Ayaka, it's very hard to fit Furina in. Even like with C2, it's a lot easier. But Shilonen is just not like Shilonen enables another playstyle. You can't really, you shouldn't play Shilonen and Freeze. If you want to really play Freeze and take advantage out of Freeze, you should play Kazuha because of the grouping.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Someone
Like,
did mention something, by the way. Sijuin.
Sidween?
no,
Sidween and Freeze through infinite Ayaka energy recharge requirements.
Yeah, but I want to say, like, regarding Ayaka and for Shilonen, I've tested it quite a bit. You not having the grouping hurts you so much with Ayaka, especially with Zone, because with the moment an enemy gets unfrozen for even a fucking second, they're being thrown halfway across the room because of Ayaka's burst. So you need the grouping to keep enemies grouped. So
guys, we forgot about one more healer, Charlotte.
Yeah, but Charlotte doesn't.
Okay, dude, okay. I don't have Charlotte on my free-to-play account which has Ayaka, and so like I calculated to see what happens if I were to pull her. It's worse using Charlotte, Furina, Kazuha is worse than just using her premium team, for the most part.
Yeah.
At least from what I count, it's just not ideal.
But the thing about the premium team is it's multiple 5 stars.
Yeah, but like I'm free to play and I have the premium team, so like. Come on now.
Yeah, I get that, right? But take like my account for example. I only bowled Ayaka. I didn't bowl Shanhe. I didn't bowl Kikomi. And for the longest time, I really didn't want to play her because her teams were really, really bad. Like I had to play Rosaria, right? And like it was horrible.
Yeah, I know how that feels.
Furina like actually made it so I can play Ayaka. I mean, I played her. I was in her DBS, but like that's besides the point. Like Charlotte can work. It's just I agree with you that in terms of calcs, it's not that good because Charlotte needs like 200 plus ER if you're gonna be running TDDS, which I managed to achieve, by the way. I have a build that runs 200 ER without even an ER sense, and I'm running TDDS on top of that, and it's still not that good. I'm gonna be honest.
No,
but it functions, right? Like
that does work. I'm not doubting that.
Yeah,
but like it's just I expected it because I went to when I went to Calc, I expected it to be because I've seen a lot of people recommending it, so I expected it to be it's probably a little worse than premium team, but it's gonna be close enough to where like it's not really that bad. But it was like, man, this is like almost like half
the thing is, I think that's important to mention, like that it's not that much far worse. Like it is worse, but it's not that much far worse because well, you don't have to build Shanhe, and I'm pretty confidently gonna claim that Shanhe is never getting a rerun again due to the Chronicle banner. Retirement home.
But at that point, like Ayaka, I think Ayaka just really, really needs Shenhe to do anything. I think that if you play Ayaka Charlotte, then why are you playing Ayaka? Like it's just like to me, it's just the consequences of your actions if you're forced to play Ayaka and Charlotte because you forced Ayaka.
Here's the thing. I have a solution. C1 Citalali.
No,
dude.
You get 40% from scroll, you get TDDS, and you get the Shanhe pulse from Citalali.
That's not even like budget Shenhe. That's more expensive than Shenhe. You could try it, but like, brother,
Yeah. But no, it's more of propaganda. I just find it funny to always meme on like Shanhe because like listen, I like Shanhe as like a lore character. I just don't really like her ER requirements without C1. They're so bad, right? And you can run Fav and that's fine, but like it feels bad to have her signature and not like to have the unit. And again, that's just me. But the
Hey,
point is
listen,
right.
something else I
C1
tested.
Lolly is
Oh, sorry,
really not
you
that
can.
far off.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just look at Sita Lolly and the first thing that comes to their mind, oh, she didn't buff cryo units. But I've seen a video, I think it was by DH Swap, which is like a speedrunner, uh, with C6 Sita Lolly, because obviously he's doing whale stuff, right? She's always better than Shanha.
Yeah.
Like literally, C6 Sita Lolly with any cryo unit is better than Shanha. Straight
That's how
up.
you pronounce that dude's name? D.H. Schwab.
I don't know.
I call
DHCWSP.
me and my friends just call him DHC. That's what we just call him because that's a
Yeah.
he's got a weird name
But
like engineering, but
my point is, like, with C1 Sita Lolly, right? It wouldn't surprise me if it's, like, pretty comparable to Shanghai, just due to the scroll and TDDS and the,
yeah,
like, the C1
yeah.
benefits.
I
And
will.
another thing
Yeah,
that you could do, for example, is instead of TDDS, because you don't have a C6 Bennett like I do, you just use sac frags, right? Like, you use Bennett below C6, or use Aeon Sun, let's say, with Ayaka, even though I wouldn't recommend it, but let's say you have, like, a form of an attack buff. You can, instead of TDDS, run sac frag, and that gives you 5 cryo particles per cast.
yeah.
There goes
I
your
didn't know
Ayaka
that.
ER needs.
Yeah,
Like, your Ayaka doesn't need ER anymore. So, yeah, and you don't have to even burst on Sita Lolly in that team, right? You only use the E to activate her C1. It can work, but I guess for the most part, a lot of people don't have C1. So it's more of me just spreading propaganda for people to get Sita Lolly C1.
honestly, people should have gotten. So I see one is actually. I feel like it's a little underrated. It's actually a pretty solid constellation. It's actually pretty good.
I mainly got it for DBS Kachina. She went from 24k fully buffed by a C2 Furina and like Goro and everything into 40k. I am so happy.
That kind of goes hard. I just want to say this for Shenna though, and having run Fav on her, I was calculating the new event weapon on her, which it does work. I tested it. You get the 40 attack for your E. It's pretty close to Calamity Queller while giving you a decent bit of ER. I feel like it might just be better than Calamity Queller for Shenha, because you get a Fav amount of ER. You don't get obviously the Fav particles, but you also get like 40% attack. And the flat attack given, it's like if you factor in ER for Calamity Queller, it's like 3100 for Calamity, while it being I think it's like 28 for the new event weapon, which is pretty close for a free weapon. So there's that.
Calamity Queller
Yeah, no,
is
the
kind
weapon
of.
is good.
The thing is, I kind of consider it more like a Emily weapon nowadays because it's so broken on
Honestly
Emily.
true. Honestly true.
It's like
The
almost
thing
as
about
good as
Emily,
the
I don't
signature.
know if I ever recommend her to people though that her sig, like, isn't her sig like somewhere around like I wanna say right, and maybe I'm stretching it 70 ER. Like her weapon passive is disgusting.
Yeah, it's a
For
lot
any
of
character
energy
that
recharge, but in the current Abyss, like it is very Abyss dependent, and in the current Abyss, in the like multi-wave chamber, you can play 0 energy recharge and still burst off cooldown, but it's just very niche, the
that's
situation.
insane.
Like it's
But again, that's assuming another Dendro character like Nietzsche, right?
yeah, that's true. If you don't have another Dendro character, then yeah.
Because I really like playing Emily like by herself as Dendro character, like for example Emily National, or Emily Mono Byro, right? And or even Emily Furina. Like Emily can, if you put her on field, I truly believe she's one of those characters that can become a DBS. That people
Yeah,
just
I think so
don't
too.
even look at
I
it,
need to
right?
try that. I
You
can
just
try that
give
yellow
her the
card.
Bennett buff, and man, she's gonna do some serious damage. Like,
Yeah, I'm going to talk about that in a video that's coming out soon on my main channel. Be hyped. I can like promote my own videos, I guess. Since it's my
nice,
channel.
promotion.
I'm looking forward.
Imagine.
I'm talking about Dendro. By the way, this is a good segue. Can we move on to Dendro? because I wanted to talk about Dendro, like very quickly.
Yeah, sure.
I'm gonna go for it.
I already did the self-promoting, and I'm going to talk about this too. But I think people overrated the fact that Dendro is like a low investment thing. I think, like, just,
Bro's a Butterfur watcher.
what?
The bro's a Butterfur watcher.
The what?
But Butterfur made a video a long time ago that blew up. That
Oh,
was saying the Hyperbloom is overrated. That whole thing. Anyway, sorry. I was making a
Yeah,
joke.
the butterfly. Bro, this guy just comes up, says the most controversial thing, and just disappears for a few months. But some of his takes are pretty good.
I've never heard of that name.
Imagine.
But anyway.
His channel is not that big, but he exists.
Oh, I see. Well, anyway, so like it is gearing an actual good Dendro team is pretty difficult compared to gearing a Mavuika team, for example. I don't know.
That is Mavuika.
What?
That says Mavuika though, to be fair, but
Yeah, but like I don't know why like Sejef and mainly Sejef made such a big thing out of like, oh my god, so many, like you don't need any investment, and then like what he flexed with was that he had 100 EM on like his pieces, and that he had a good like that he could off piece his like flower, I think, which already says a lot because it's so hard to get like EM stats on your on like the sets that you want to, because EM is like the rarest stat, right? Like for Goblet, Sands, and Circlet.
For Goblet, yes, sitting at 2.5.
Yeah, and then you for Bloom teams you would actually need, you could potentially need like a Nilo Bloom 2 sets sometimes. Like if there's 2 triggers, which I'm not really like sure, but like also Nilu needs a very like Nilu does need a decent set too, which she can't really share with anyone else. The closest character that can share her set with Nilu would be Sigewin, but no one has Sigewin. That also has Nilu, I'm guessing. And then if you play a Hytham Nahida, then you have Cookie, obviously, to invest into because of the EM. Then you also have a crit character, a Hytham, but you also have to invest into Nahida to get like the full damage, because Nahida is also like an okay portion of the team's damage. How is that more like resin efficient, or like so much like you can play the team at such a low floor than a Mavuika team where you just you go into the scroll domain, you put Sidlali on TGDS and some cope sets, and then Bennett you can just strongbox, I guess, and then like get a decent amount of energy recharge subs, of course. Then I guess Shilonen, but like also just some random instructor set, and then Mavuika you can actually focus on while spending your like artifacts. So how do people still say that Bloom and Dendro teams have this low floor? The only thing that I can see is like 4-star teams, like because it's all like reaction damage. So you don't need to rely on like the actual kits doing anything. So you can kind of play cope 4-star characters to get good results. But they also buffed the overload reaction. And I've seen a funny run that used overload to carry. Like they used Lisa, and it was like they were getting 30k like on their overload hits. So I don't think that's like, it's still like, I mean, technically you get like double that on Hyperbloom teams, but like,
What was the investment for the Lisa? Was it by any chance C4?
no, it was, I don't think it was. The thing is, it was like the second half of this Abyss, so it was entirely single target, so the C4 wouldn't have mattered. Yeah, but
Yeah.
anyway, so technically, Overload can also kind of do that nowadays. Like you can kind of cheat with Overload damage, not to the same extent. And then, like, although regarding Constellations, I still think like Dendro teams without C2, at least C2 cookie, are very cooked. So like Hyperbloom teams, I mean. And then, yeah, Burgeon is good every like 7 abysses, but that's like
Virgin is good where Nilo Bloom is good.
yeah.
Simple as.
And I guess I have less to criticize because Virgin, it really is just, I don't think you need to, like, I guess maybe you need to invest into Furina and your lance damage, but they are universal, so you might already have them built. But yeah, my entire conclusion is just the low floor thing is mostly a scam, like of Dendro. It was just a hype thing back then, and I think it was just people like were saying, yeah, the low, like the actual like people that were making good decks were saying the floor is good, the low floor, like the floor. Okay, I almost have it. The low floor is good for the ceiling being like that, I guess.
Abysmal, basically.
It was basically just that you spend amount of time, like a certain amount of time investing, and then that was that. Whereas other teams, you could just keep investing and investing because the ceiling was a lot higher than the floor.
Yeah.
Or like, well, that's just kind of how it was for
I guess
the thing is, when it comes to getting the EM part, that part, like I said, Butterford talked about this, and that part I disagree with, was that getting EM is hard. Once you get to about like 700, 800 EM on a build, which you can do in a 2-piece set rather than a 4-piece, you don't gain that much from getting to like 1,000. Like, so I would argue, at least for building the EM character, it doesn't really take that much investment, that much resin to do, because most people are already getting good 1 or 2 pieces, or 1 or 2 pieces if they're saving the right ones. Anyways, they're getting 1 or 2 pieces that can be used for an EM character. Like my free-to-play account has that for my cookie. Whenever I decide to build Hyperbloom, right?
Oh wait, I
forgot.
forgot.
Good domain.
That is actually right, but I forgot another thing.
Level
90ing characters.
That is something though. And I was gonna get to that too. Level 90ing is the part that is people don't really, because here's the thing though about that though. Most understand that you don't need to 90 a character, so they'll do it anyway.
Yeah, that's
even
true.
Though you can keep most characters at 80 out of 90 and save yourself over the course of many characters probably like 10 million mora by not leveling every character to 90, but no one really realizes that. I get asked all the time why I have like 90% of my characters on my free to play account level 81 instead of 90. My brother, because you don't need to waste the resources.
Level 81,
yeah.
So true. I also use 81.
Yeah, I just do it so I know a character is actually ascended.
Yes,
yeah, it helps me know. Otherwise, yeah, actually, my Kokomi is, because I used to use an open world a whole bunch to explore with my Ayaka, is actually level 82. She got the 82 by just overworld XP. Oh, dude.
To go back to the Jeff take, I actually want to say just 2 things real quick. I'll let you know, Saga, that you should be happy, because he now stopped doing that. He now stopped playing Hyperbloom in one of the 2 sides since he has Chevrouz. So he has Mavuika melt one side, or Arlecchino melt one side, and he has Chevrouz teams the other side.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's going to be spreading the Hyperbloom propaganda any further. But again, should I play the devil advocate here?
You can.
Yeah.
I think I'm probably going to bring you some of the points.
You guys are talking about how hard it is to get an EM beast, but we forgot about something called the artifact dispenser, or whatever it's called. That literally just solves that issue. There you go. You just need 1 EM beast now.
I mean, I guess, but I'd argue there are more worthwhile things to use it on.
There are definitely more worthwhile things to do, but that gets me to the first point actually I want to mention, or technically the second, which is I don't think anyone is arguing that Hyperbloom is goated and it's good compared to the current teams. I think what people are arguing is it's a good entry level team. So if you're low ER and you just want to absolutely stomp everything in Overworld, you go unlock Dendro Traveler. There you go. You have access to Dendro now. You play a Hyperbloom team. And there is nothing in lower world levels that will survive a Hyperbloom team. You will just decimate everything in front of you, right? In terms of Abyss, it will also carry you to a respectable amount. Now, I'm not talking level floor 12. I'm talking up to floor 12. Hybrid Bloom can probably still carry you to there, right? So the argument is that it's an entry team, not that it's a competitive team. If people are arguing that it's a competitive team, I don't think there is even an argument to be had. Just look at the DPS it does and just look at the other DPS. If your argument is the DPS that Hybrid Bloom does is enough to clear, I don't think they're wrong as well.
Yeah.
But I have to be specific, right? With the Hybrid Bloom, is that you mentioned, Saga, that like you have one or two options. Either you go with the premium team and you need a lot of investment, and I agree with you, or you go with the co-op team that's 4 stars, and it's pretty bad because you're only getting basically Hybrid Bloom damage. And I agree with you. The thing that you forgot though is double Hybrid Bloom with Century Yalon. You on-field Nahida, Cookie is off-field. It's a pretty good team. Now, it is one team, but if we were to argue that a lot of people have Yalon gets the Hydro Resonance from Sinchu. She does very meaningful talent damage. You can make Sinchu do even more damage by decreasing his ER needs, right? Like putting him on a crit weapon instead of Sack or Faf. And Nahida doesn't even matter what you're running on her. Completely irrelevant. She's just there to apply Dendro. If anything, I'd even argue, and I do this because it's funny, I'd put an HP weapon on her just so she doesn't die. Because I hate playing Lollymon. She's very fragile, right? And that team alone, I'm pretty confident should still be able to clear like reasonable abysses, right? Because it has meaningful talent, and the only character you need to focus on is Cookie. And the reason I'm by the way mentioning this specifically is not to be like, ha, got you or whatever. It's mostly because that's the one I've seen that Jeff play the most. Like out of like the 10 time I've seen him play Hybrid Bloom teams, it's usually double Hydro. Because it's very comfortable, it's very easy to play, right? You have flexibility of switching in and out of characters. You don't care about like Nahida's personal damage. So it's a decent team to say the least, right? Even by like today's standards.
That's the team most people refer to when they say Hybrid Bloom has a low floor, because it's two characters you already likely have built up, and then Cookie and Nahida.
Okay,
right?
Regarding that though, the thing is, you said, like, first you said that you only need to invest into Cookie, but then you said that Yelan does a decent amount of damage, and Xingqiu also. So you do still need to invest into Yelan and Xingqiu in their damage.
But what I meant is, like, in terms of Hybrid Bloom, because I assume you already invested into these characters for other teams, right? Like, it's not like you're investing into Yelan and Xingqiu for the Hybrid Bloom. You're investing into them because, well, you have them. Right?
Then that's not a starting
and you're
team.
not going to change your builds for Hybrid Bloom team. The only thing that you could do is, like I said, is not even artifacts. You just switch the weapon, right? You remove the sack or the Faf from both of them, and you give them crit weapons if you have any. There you go.
But then,
simple as.
Then it's not really a starting team anymore, is it? Like it's something to already have on your account laying around.
I mean, my thing about it is, like, I mean, you're gonna have to invest in someone as you level up in the game anyway, right?
Yeah.
And with Hybrid Bloom, because of how, like I said, getting like 2-piece EM isn't too difficult for someone like Cookie. I would argue anyway, like on like say 2-piece down a gilded 2-piece Wonder Troop or something like that.
Yeah.
That kind of eliminates one character you have to invest a lot more into to get their damage up. Then it would be like having to build on, let's say you want to build a good team, like a Nouvelle team or something, where you really have to invest in their damage to make it be of the same level at that lower event. Like, it's just the floor is there, but the ceiling isn't, and that's the cutoff, right? Just because the ceiling is so low, right? But I think
the floor. To tell you, Saga, about like the Hydro characters is that it's the unfortunate reality that most characters that are Hydro are 5 stars. There's no running away from that. But with the assumption that you have one, right? Like Yelan or Furina, let's say. I can't believe I'm saying this, but even Nouvelle, right? Like, as long as you have an HP scaling Hydro characters, that's it, right? The Cookie and Nahida, I'm taking them as given already, right? Like, because we're arguing that Hybrid Bloom is not as good as it was. So you have a Nahida like it's collecting dust. and you obviously have Cookie. If you don't have Cookie, just switch your Raiden into EM, because I assume Raiden is a very popular character. Like, the team is theoretically accessible. It doesn't really require you to go out of your way to get it, if you already had it. But if you didn't have it, and we're talking about you wanting to go for Hyperbloom teams right now, I'd say no, obviously not, right? There's no reason for you to bowl so many units in this game now because of how bad they are, and that's why I think, by the way, they introduced the Chronicle banner. Certain units like Albedo, Klee, Eula, Shanhe, like a lot of these units just won't sell anymore, so they might as well just retire them to get them out of the rotation.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, but like I think you said like something interesting about Nouvellette, which brings me to another point. Like for the starter team, you get so many pulls at the start of the game. Why aren't you just like, obviously this would like mean that you would need to like the character that's running at the moment like enough to justify pulling for them. But why not just pull for the character that just came out? Like, obviously, unless it's... Or, like, if there's a strong character rerunning, I think that would always be better than needing to use Lisa to trigger your Hyperblooms in Overworld. I would much rather... I have multiple, like, alt accounts, and I just don't use Dendro.
I mean, if your alt
It
account
depends on
happens
what
to
you
get
have, because
it kind of depends what you get though. Like I have an alt
if you
account I
don't
don't
have
play on.
Hyperbloom, what are you using? Like, are we using Melt? Because that would require crit. Are we using Chevy teams? That would require you to have Chevy.
Sorry, I was just gone for a second. What are you saying?
I think the thing me and Kinkle were trying to tell you is that the issue is, if you're not using Hyperbloom, what alternatives are you using on lower accounts?
Just like the character that's on the banner, if you like him.
Okay, but the character on the like, I don't see the point. Sorry, like, because the character on the banner could be anywhere between Mizuki or Sejuin to like Nouvellette, right? So it really depends.
Yeah, but
like,
the newer,
I personally wouldn't
the newer
recommend
Natlan releases are always something. Like if you are on an if it's a modern, I don't think the last few banners, like besides Mizuki and Sejuin, like besides all of these banners had like actual good 5 stars and 4 stars. So that would, like, I would much rather use the pulls instead of like immediately investing into like a Dendro team and just pull for like the units on there, because it would probably just be better, like playing even Chaska or something.
Yeah.
And then you were going to say like crit, I guess, but I actually don't think that, like, even if you don't have crit, I think it would probably still be better for these characters to be played instead of the Hyperbloom teams. Because, like, consider this, at low AR, you can't level your characters, meaning the Hyperbloom damage is also not going to be... It's also capped because of the level.
Yeah. There is a lot to be said about transformative versus what's the other one? Transformative, and I forgot the other name of the reaction.
Multiplicative?
Multiplicative reactions, right? Like, I agree with you, but again, we have to go back to what's the character. And I already said, right, that the Dendro teams, the Hyperbloom teams, are for entry level. So if you are no longer an entry level due to you having a really powerful character like Mavuika or Nouvellette on the banner, then yeah, obviously you should just invest into that. I don't think you should invest into a Hyperbloom team. But the idea is, we have to define what entry means, right? Does it mean that you're at the point where you can't fully ascend your character? Does it mean that you can ascend your character but you still don't have a good carry? Like, it really depends. I agree with you, if you can't ascend your characters, there might be better teams. My one of the favorite teams that I recommend to people at really low AR would be Overload. Overload actually is really good at low AR. Sure, it's a transformative reaction, but due to the buffs we got recently, it's pretty good. And it doesn't really require crit. You just build a bunch of EM on your characters if you have like a bunch of instructor pieces.
Yeah. Overload's
Um,
great for early game, actually. Really, really good. It carried one of my oldest accounts through the OAR stuff.
I just
So,
think
like,
the
it really depends on what we mean by entry. I think is what will decide whether or not you should invest into Hyperbloom or not. But I'm saying entry is you don't have better characters to invest into, and you can get your like characters to like let's say level 70 or 80. The Hyperbloom should still be decent option to like start off the game.
yeah, I would just like instead of Hyperbloom, I would just always rather like the entry level would never be Hyperbloom for me nowadays. That's basically what I'm saying. I think
Yeah,
even
it depends on the 4 stars as well, right? Like let's say you got a Chevy copy.
yeah,
Damn,
that's
bro, who
big.
cares about Hyperbloom? just
Yeah.
just
It
overload
really,
all the way.
this kind of just boils down. If we're really talking like low AR entry level, it really kind of depends on when you start the game and
Yeah.
where you start, like how the banners progress. Because if you never get a Kuki, you're never doing that. Like
Yeah,
Lisa,
Lisa
it's
sucks.
just not good. But like if you get an Ahita, you might try it for like on my Asia account. Oh, I got Nahida as my first. No, I got Yelan as my first ever temple. And I got Nahida, and so I ended up doing Hyperbloom. And then I got a Kuki, and I got Nouvelette. So now I'm doing Nouvelette Hyperbloom as my teams. So like it just kind of how it ever progresses. Like my Yoimiya account, I got Ayaka as in my first 10 pull. And I just use Harbinger on Ayaka. Like it kind of just depends on who you get on as to what you use. Hyperbloom can be a great startup because it is a transformative reaction, meaning you don't at low AR, it's going to be doing the majority of your damage anyway because you're not critting at low AR, so you're doing like a 100 to 300 damage, whereas your Hyperblooms can do maybe 1 to 2k, maybe 3k, right? So like it really just depends. That's all I'm
There's
gonna
there's
say.
way too many variables for a new account to know, because like you said, it depends on what you get. Like, wow, imagine you did your first temple and you got a 5 star, and the 5 star is Tenari.
Yeah.
Well, you are playing spread. You got Kaching, you're playing spread. You got, let's say, the Luke. Well, no, just don't. You could play Burge in the Luke, but like, just, you know, but do something else, man. Right? You got like who else is there? Noelle. Like if you got Noelle, bro, she's gonna carry you for most of the game at the start because she just does everything, right? And then you really have a very good incentive to go Furina. So it really depends on what characters you have, what 4 star you have. Certain 4 stars will just make more sense, like Cookie, for example, to go into Hyperbloom route. Certain 4 stars like Chevy will just tell you go Overload. Maybe you get like I don't know a bazillion Fischl. Doesn't matter at that point. Fischl will just do everything for you. So like it really depends what teams like what characters you get at the start. And like you said, Saga, once you get a banner unit, most of the time it doesn't matter to do any of these archetypes we're talking about. You just play whatever that DPS wants,
Yeah,
assuming
exactly.
it's a
That was my
DPS.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So
I think if like I guess until you get that character, you might cope with something else. That's true.
yeah,
And technically, you also need a second side. So if you like at some point in the abyss, you might need like it's not enough if you can just play Mavuika on the one side. Then you might actually play Dendro teams because it's going to be better than like Lunette jungling Kea or something.
dude, I can feel the inner Zajef in you coming out. What happens?
No, just
You're finally understanding the way of the Jeff. But jokes aside, yeah, that's like the argument for Dendro teams is that they don't use the same uh, core members that the other teams usually need. Which, if you want, I can get into the next misconception that I have. Potentially my last.
the we've been streaming for a very long time, but Kinkle, do you have one more, or would that be it?
That was it for me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, then we can get into the last conception for today then.
Yeah. All right. The last one I want to talk about is Bennett, my goat. So, here's the thing. There is this new character coming into the turf that happened to have white hair, green eyes, and a bandage on the nose. And everyone is hyping her up as like the second coming of Jesus. And while they're not completely wrong, I think there can be a point where we're overhyping Eonsa. That mainly came from a discussion I had with Saga the other day in like Discord.
Mm-hmm.
I think we completely forgot how unbelievably insane Bennett is at destroying certain elemental shields, and how insane they are at generating particles for pyro characters. So what I'm trying to say is, I think the misconception is a lot of people are waiting for veracity to come and just gonna replace Bennett. Period. They don't want to use the circle impact character, right? Eon-san is the goat. Eon-san is gonna save us from everything, and I don't think that's entirely true. There will still be quite a bit of scenarios where Bennett is still better than Eon-san, not because of the team damage, not because of the synergy, but because of the matchups in Abyss. They have cryo shields, Bennett the goat. They have electro shields, Bennett the goat. They have enemies that put ice on you, he's gonna purify you from the ice. Sure, you might get melted and get one shot, but assuming the enemy doesn't do insane amounts of damage, he's gonna cleanse you from like whatever element is on you, right? And with the combination also of like some dank setups like Sunfire and Bennett allowing for certain VV setups, there is really a good argument to remember at the end of the day that Eonson will not replace Bennett in as much scenarios as people expect it is. Like I wouldn't just take all my artifacts that I had on Bennett and throw it on like Eonson and just unequip Bennett from like whatever weapons he was on, right? Like there's still good incentives to use Bennett, even if you really hate the circle impact, even if you hate the character or whatever, right? Like obviously if you hate the character, you don't have to
Yeah,
play
and
Bennett.
especially because some of Jansa's best team also include Bennett, of course.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
But it's very important, especially because of the future abysses, hint hint. Bennett is going to be a saving grace. Bennett is going to be literally the answer to the second half.
Okay.
It doesn't matter anymore what you bring. Just both Bennett second half and you'll be good, man.
That
You won't have to worry about anything anymore.
That I think that take is true and that take is fair. However, it's like it might not be as big as we expect because okay, so I get where you're coming from. I still think a lot of people will replace Bennett with Jan-san. That's just mainly because okay, at first people might not replace Jan-san, to be fair though, like adding to your point, because I don't think people will get Jan-san to a high constellation level anyway, and I think Jan-san kind of needs constellations to be very, very competitive with Bennett, otherwise not really. But
I mean, judging by the leaks, it seems people, or not the leaks, the chat, it seems people really hate Bennett.
oh, damn.
So I would be betting money that even at C0, people are gonna just kick him out. The poor guy.
A lot of people don't like Bennett, but I mean, I'm banking on the fact there's gonna be another like Elon situation where like we have a potential replacement for Xingqiu, but the reality is a lot of times it's gonna be used either on opposite sides of the abyss or just used together.
Yeah, and then,
so like Bennett's not going anywhere. He's too good. Cosmo didn't really go anywhere when Jolene released. Xingqiu has gone places now. Xingqiu has gone places now because of Furina, but still, like,
okay.
I don't think Bennett's
the
really
reason
I sent you
why
a picture, Saga. Actually, if you want to put it on the stream, since this is relevant. I know I'm asking you for extra work, but like, I think this will demonstrate the whole like Bennett, the goat agenda.
Okay, regarding this though, I actually think there was like a similar point that someone popular TC made in another video, which was the Gilonen video, if anyone remembers, the Gilonen Jamie video, which is people don't like that video, and I think it's for a good reason, because he like undersells Gilonen quite a bit, and the thing is, like, one of his points was very similar to that, which was that Zhongli can shred the like geo shields extremely fast, and he's extremely competent at that. But the problem is just that we don't have any like influence over what kind of checks they put in. So for the most part, we've been completely fine. There was not a single Zhongli check in a while, I think. So who, like, everyone kind of benched their Zhongli, and it's not really relevant. Like, that take wasn't really that relevant. And the thing is, the Electro thing could end up the same. I can show it on the screen. In the first chamber, it's a bit jump scare to see this abyss, because it's an interesting abyss.
It definitely is an interesting abyss. That is one way to describe it.
So in the first chamber, we have 2 enemies that have electro shields. I guess in the second chamber too, but like you would probably kill because it has like a damage shield. You could also kill it before, like you could remove the damage shield and then you know what I mean. But like in this, Bennett would actually be very beneficial instead of Yan-san.
Hey, he made a bun. Beneficial. Use beneficial, guys.
Yeah.
Easy.
But
yeah, right? Like abysses like this is just screaming to me. You either have very dedicated certain carries to counter that setup, or you just use that one unit that is on release that everyone has leveled up most probably, you know? And the latter sounds so much better than having to actually run like like what even carries could deal with these? Like Risley? Cool. Maybe would you do Ayaka? Is this worth Ayaka?
No.
Because I feel like the Seahorse would be Ayaka's bursts.
Seahorse on Ayaka's Seahorse. That's a Seahorse.
Yeah, Seahorse.
I think.
12-1. Oh, Seahorse for Ayaka burst. It's not that bad. I've played it with that.
Yeah, like I played it a little bit, but it's just there are times, you know, where you break the crystal and you don't have your Ayaka burst, and by the time you have it, he's like running around again, and it's like, man.
This is why you have Favs and high Ayaka. That's what I thought.
True. Or you run C1 sack frag Citalali. Easy. So what about the second wave? Is that a YUP?
That is a
Electro
YUP. I do believe that is a YUP. Yeah. The elements on those things even matter, really? Is it? Aren't they all the same? Or no, they have different...
No, they're different. So I remember, for example, the fire one requires you to heal or something like that, I think. That's how you get rid of his shield.
Really? They all have different... I thought, like, in open world, when you fight them, you just deal damage to their shields and they break.
That's what I do, right? In open world, I don't care. I just smack them and they die, yeah. But in...
I know. They've never been in Abyss before.
In higher levels, I think there are certain mechanics to one of them. Not all of them, right? Like, a few of them, like you said, you just kind of destroy their shield. But I think I remember one of them people saying that you needed to do a lot of healing. Otherwise, like, he just doesn't care.
I know they're the local legends, but those have completely different mechanics. Right?
Yeah. Maybe I'm thinking about the local legend one.
I think you might be thinking about the local ones. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll see when it gets here. But
yeah. But this is a tough abyss, to say the least, right? Like, even though I'm recommending to put Bennett second side, it's like, what are you gonna do first side, right? Because Mono Byro would be very good first side, and Cheverus teams would also be very good first side. Okay. But if you do that, then again, you have to play like cryo units second side, or not. You have to, but it would be really nice. So here's a hot take. We talked about Dendro and how it's not relevant anymore. Would Dendro be good for second side?
I mean,
Suwani,
the biggest, like, for Suwani, I think Suwani would be the biggest issue, because, like, if you play double Hydro, then it does suffer a lot from Suwani being Hydro resistant. And if you play a Hythem Nahida, then I guess it's not too much multi-wave, so it could work. Maybe the wave 1 of chamber 2 is also kind of very restrictive, because it's like inherently pyro, right?
Because here's what I'm thinking, right? Like what Dendro would allow you, and I'm talking Al Haytham, and the reason I'm talking Al Haytham specifically is because I want to call this a big boy abyss, right? It's not an abyss that I'd recommend to my casual friends to try the 36 star. It's one of the harder abysses that we've had in a while. So if we're talking about like the premium Hyperbloom team being Alhaitham, the benefit of you being able to run that is it would allow you to then run Mono Byro first half. And Mono Byro would absolutely decimate the third chamber first half, which would give you more than enough time to fight the Swanee for longer, right?
Wait,
And while the Swanee does have resistances, you have D-board, right? And unlike VV, D-board works off field, so you've already cut its resistance by 40%.
which monopyro
So
team on first half?
So, I mean, any of the Monobyro teams with Arlecchino, for example, or Cheveru's teams with Bennett as
Oh,
well.
okay, you
right?
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, right. So like that would I feel like would be a really interesting combo that you could potentially run. Again, I'm asking you guys because I'm not confident how well Alhaitham is gonna do versus that fire enemy, but I feel like it shouldn't be that much of a deal, right? They're usually not that tanky, and you'll make up that time you lost against the Electro Shield.
You talking about against the wave 1, 12-2? Bottom half?
Yeah.
I mean, you have Hydra units, so aren't they innate pyro or?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
So
those are the lava boys.
You have
They
Furina,
have
Lanzing Joe off field, they'll be able to vape. So it shouldn't take that long.
Yeah, probably.
I was thinking more Alhaitham, Nahida, Furina, Cookie.
I really don't like that. I'm gonna be honest. I heavily prefer Yelan and some teams than Furina unless I'm running double Hydro, but
Because my theory here, Kinkle, is that the Electro checks, being able to decimate them, is going to be faster clear times than actually doing damage.
well, yeah, that's kind of how it usually is, but especially for 12-1,
right?
but
And like, sure, you're going to be biting the bullet with the Swanee, but like again, because you're going to be running, so my assumption here is you're running a really strong Byro team first half. You're going to have a lot of time for the Swanee. Like your team is just going to allow you so much time for the
as long as you
Swanee.
have at
So it
least
shouldn't be
like
an issue.
2 minutes or so for this one, you should be fine. But that is 3 waves you have to get through. Or no,
But
it's 2 waves. Never mind.
Honestly, everything is going to go down to one factor. That's going to be the decider of what teams can work and what teams can't work. How tall is the structure for the Chamber 2 first half boss?
Yeah, true. We don't know that.
This is for the Versa release, right? Or
yeah.
This is between the 16th. You can see the date on top.
I just removed it.
Imagine.
Yeah.
I'll go back in the stream.
Okay. It was from the 16th of not the next month. The
Oh, so that means this is.
It's like the end of the Versa patch, like near the end.
Yeah, so it's when that supposed other Curtain 5.6 releases.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Skirk,
that's why some
hopefully.
people theorized we're going to be getting Skirk, and the people instantly assumed, or not Skirk, the other unit that was supposed to be sauce. Either or, right? People assumed that they would have really good cryo application. Because if they're putting a bunch of electro checks, then their cryo application should be really high. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think it might be more of an indication that they're locked into freeze teams, or they're locked into like cryo teams, let's say. But who knows, right? This is all like speculations at this point.
Yeah.
Speaking. Yeah, that's future impact, I guess. We don't know yet. But what we do know is that this is going to be the end of the episode. Thank you all for watching. If you want to be a member of the podcast, then you can text me on Discord. My nickname is in the bio. I will see if you qualify and then you could potentially join. Yeah, thanks for watching and bye-bye. You also have to say bye.
Oh, we have to say it too? Oh,
Yeah.
goodbye. Kinkle out, the thing I usually